all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller. We are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, the Southern workers who make 54% of Ford's profits went on strike. We talked to their local union president. UAW workers are fighting for a shorter work week, and we play some clips from a panel where they gathered workers across the globe who already have a shorter work week. We're going to hear their testimonies later. We talk about how politicians in Alabama are not interested in supporting the UAW members on strike at ZF Manufacturing in Tuscaloosa. That's a real shocker. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number. The line is not open for calls, but you can send us a text message. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857. You can also find us on YouTube and participate in the live chat. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular on our website, TVLR.fm. You can sign up to our newsletter there and get what happened last week in Southern Labor and Boss Watch in your email inbox every week. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to make a one-time or monthly recurring contribution through our union payment processing service, go to tvlr.fm/donate. You can also become a patron at patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. You can go to our store to buy our new Join a Union shirt, tvlr.fm/store. We've got about 25 of those extra that we bought from pre-orders, and I haven't shipped the pre-orders that we got out. Still sitting in my closet, but I've been busy this week, so I'll get to it next week. That's the plan. If you're a member of a union, then you should get your local to sponsor the show if you can. You can reach out to me for more details about that. We could not do the show without our union partners.
And let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Unclaimed Mysteries Internet Radio, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check it out. As you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who believe that Alabama and the South's labor movement and working class deserve a bigger platform. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we could not do it without you. We want to thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener. We appreciate you spending some time with us this morning.
So I don't know that it seems like it just almost seems like it would be it would be difficult to justify not addressing the huge current events that are happening right now, being something of a news media current events type show. Even though we're very tight on labor, that's what we focus on. But the events in the Middle East have really captured everybody's attention, and I'm not going to say a lot. I don't feel comfortable saying a lot about it. I'm by no means an expert on the region, and so I'm not going to say very much more than my instincts, which are the deaths of the Israeli civilians were horrifying. I can't imagine the pain of the parents who lost children and the children who lost parents, the folks who lost friends. I'm hoping and I'm praying for their peace and safety and healing, just the same as I am for the families of the definitely more than 140 Gazan children who have been killed by Israeli airstrikes, for the 9 UN staffers who have been killed by Israel, and the hundreds of other civilians who've been brutally killed in the airstrikes just in the last week. The death toll's up to 1,800 in Gaza, including Reuters journalists. But also in the years and decades preceding, and as working people who advocate for working people, we cannot condone the ruthless slaughter of working people on any side. And our government should absolutely not be giving a blank check to any government that treats civilians so wantonly. We should, so, you know, that's basically it. Civilian deaths are bad, and somehow that's a controversial opinion, actually. But that's our opinion. And I think that's rooted in the values that make us unionists. The same reason that we spend so much time advocating for working people on and off the job through the labor movement. That's the same thing that motivates us to be appalled by the deaths, both in Israel and in Gaza. And that's why, rather than giving a blank check, we should be calling for de-escalation, for ceasefires, and for peace. I would also encourage people to get their news on this front from reputable news sources like Israel's paper of record, Haaretz, not shock jocks on the radio who don't know the first thing about the conflict, and that goes for us as well. But there are a few others that I have in mind. So yeah, that's really that's really all that was on my mind about that.
Well, I'll just pick up from there to say that recently I was in a training where we were discussing leadership and had to identify a leader that inspires me or inspires the class. And so I thought about Eugene Debs, a man of tremendous courage and conviction, of faith and resolve, and a leader with a true heart for the people. And he was skeptical of leaders. He didn't have much faith in leaders. One of his famous quotes is that he said, "I would be ashamed to admit that I had risen from the ranks. When I rise, it will be with the ranks and not from the ranks." And it's that kind of, attitude, which is why I respect him as a leader. And that's why, I turn to him for a little wisdom in these times, because, as you said, we're not experts by any means. Bloodshed in the Middle East and Eastern Europe and around the globe reminded me of Deb's own principled stands for peace and his words, which would land him in jail. And I'm going to quote here just a bit from a speech that he gave in Canton, Ohio during the First World War, which did land him in jail. And he said, quote, "Wars throughout history have been waged for conquest and plunder. The feudal barons of the Middle Ages, the economic predecessors of the capitalists of our day, declared all wars, and their miserable serfs fought all the battles. The poor, ignorant serfs had been taught to revere their masters, to believe that when their masters declared war upon one another, it was their patriotic duty to fall upon one another and to cut one another's throats for the profit and glory of the lords and barons who held them in contempt. And that is war in a nutshell. The master class has always declared the wars. The subject class has always fought the battles. The master class has had all to gain and nothing to lose, while the subject class has had nothing to gain and all to lose, especially their lives. They have always taught and trained you to believe it to be your patriotic duty to go to war and to have yourself slaughtered at their command. But in all the history of the world, you, the people, have never had a voice in declaring war, and strange as it certainly appears, no war by any nation in any age has ever been declared by the people. And here let me emphasize the fact, and it cannot be repeated too often, that the working class who fight all the battles, the working class who make the supreme sacrifices, the working class who freely shed their blood and furnish their corpses, have never yet had a voice in either declaring war or making peace. It is the ruling class that invariably does both. They alone declare war, and they alone make peace. And, that quote has been on my mind a lot lately, as well as the words of Dr. King about the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism. And so, I turn to their words because I'm not an expert on what's happening. I don't have any special insight. I consider myself to be an internationalist, and so I know that everyday people have more in common with each other than we do with the wealthy elites who control our economies and our governments. I know it's heartbreaking to see the loss of life, particularly civilians. I know it's heartbreaking to see collective punishment being used against civilians. I know it's heartbreaking to see every bomb dropped and think of the wasted potential. It's heartbreaking to see politicians wage war rather than wage peace. And it's heartbreaking to see the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism on the rise all over the globe. I don't know what it's like to be in a war zone, to be directly impacted by terrorism, or to have to live under apartheid conditions. I can't imagine what so many families are experiencing right this moment, and my heart and solidarity goes out to them. I know it's frustrating when media and politicians push propaganda, when conversations around these issues are conducted in bad faith, when any critique of violence comes with consequences, when acknowledging the dignity of Palestinian lives is assumed to be an act of bigotry against Israeli lives. I know it's frustrating when countries and economies are fueled by the blood money of the military-industrial complex, when arms dealing and foreign policy are one and the same, when so much is invested in denying peace. As a labor activist, I believe we have to be internationalist in our outlook, demanding an end to the global race to the bottom for everyday working people. I believe we as a movement must fight for an economy and a global order based on peace and cooperation. I believe we as a movement must stand united against war crimes. I believe we as a movement must stand united in love, justice, and solidarity against bigotry, exploitation, and oppression.
That's going to be that's going to be it. We don't, like we said, we're not experts, so we don't have any special insight. But those are some of the instincts, and our instincts are towards love and respect and solidarity with civilians and innocents and against war.
Absolutely.
So with that, we're going to take a break. We're going to be right back, and we're going to be on terrain that we feel much more comfortable talking about unions. We're going to be talking to Brother Todd Dunn of UAW Local 862.
Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Represents workers at the Kentucky truck plant by Ford in Kentucky. And they make 54% of Ford's profits. They're in the South, and they just went on strike. So we're going to be talking to the president of that local union when we get back. Stay tuned, folks. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and family members are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough even to keep their jobs. We can fix this. It's time for us to find a way to close the health care coverage gap so that people can remain at work. Let's make this a priority. Let's close this gap and cover Alabama. To learn more and how you can help, visit coveralabama.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law, the name with proven results.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at IAMAW44.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can give us a call or a text, actually just a text. Phone number is 844-899-8857. You can also hang out with us in the YouTube chat. We appreciate everybody there already. Vonda says, good morning. Nashville CLC president. Always great to have her listening. Marissa, North Alabama DSA, says good morning. Miss Anonymous says morning. And we appreciate all the conversations. Appreciation of Debs. Debs is always a good source of wisdom on very many topics. So, We've got two new advertisers actually, and I have not recorded their ads, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you about them right now, and then we're going to record the ads after the show so that they'll be in circulation for the next show. But first up, Benefit Architects. They're really great. Benefit Architects has proudly supported union members and union-made products for over 35 years. And so if you are a federal employee and an AFGE member, you are eligible for hundreds of dollars in money-saving benefits, including group life insurance, dental insurance, and AFLAC insurance. So if you're a union member and don't work for the government, you can still qualify for several of these money-saving policies. Just call Tate Hewer. He's their representative for the area. Tate Hewer at 256-215-6769. for details and to enroll. Union members are a big group of folks, and so companies, they want to get our business, and so they're willing to give us a discount. And so that's so Benefit Architects helps gather some of those up for us, get the group life insurance. They've also got, I know for AFGE members, short-term disability insurance that has been very, very helpful for some of our members, I know. So definitely recommend giving Tate a call, 256-215-6769. And are we still waiting?
Oh, no.
Adam? No,
we are not.
We've got Todd. Perfect. All right. So we'll read the second ad later, and we'll go ahead and talk to Todd. Brother Todd Dunn. He started as a vehicle assembly technician in the commercial light truck department in 1995, where he very quickly threw himself into union work. In fact, in just a year, he was already serving. He currently serves on Kentucky's labor management cabinet, and most importantly, he is president of UAW Local 862 in Louisville, Kentucky, where 87 UAW members at Ford walked off the job on strike last week. He joins us now. Todd, welcome to the program.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
Pretty good. We've got close to 9,000 employees on strike. We're trying to process all of the strike sign-ups for the strike benefit. We processed about 3,500 yesterday over at our Kentucky Fair and Exposition Center, and hopefully we'll get another 3,000 today and finish up on Sunday mostly.
Well, there you go. And that's something that people don't really think about with the strike. There's a lot of logistical stuff that, the leadership and the officers and volunteers from the rank and file do to make sure that, people are able to get the support that they're entitled to from the union and help them with anything else that they might need during the strike. So that's, it's a lot of, a lot of the leadership, they don't get any time off during a strike. In fact, in some cases, they work more than when they're off strike.
It's really amazing. I spoke to our volunteers yesterday. We're relying on a lot of assistance. We had five people come up from international auditors to get the process going. Other than that, it's just volunteers, and it's amazing to see how many show up. It's a 4-hour duty once a week, and we've got 50, 60 members right now doing the process of strike registration for about 40 hours this weekend alone. So yeah, it's all.
Yeah, but like many hands make light work. So if you're able to get a good bunch of people in there, you can do you can trim it down for folks. So, but before we talk some more about the current situation and the current strike, I'm interested in talking to you about your union work. I read your bio on the UAW's website, and like I said in the intro, you really jumped right into working with the union. Why is that?
When I first started out, I started out a job called the chain gang. And it was funny. There was 11 of us hired in. 2 of us knew how to paint, but they needed a couple men upstairs on the chain gang. And finally I said, quit arguing over me. Let's go. Once I got up there, I realized, how tough that work was, where the units come over from body shop. So you have a metal vehicle, if you will, just a shell. And then we have to hang it on chains, and it goes through dip tanks. To be E-coated, where it gets a paint coating on the surface. So that job up there in the summer would get, 99, 98 degrees, sometimes 100. And sometimes you'd have 100% humidity because of the weather and the E-coat phosphate pre-rent. So, I mean, you were wringing wet every day. You were dancing on rollers. You would tear the soles off your shoes quite often. A lot of shoulder injuries, and I thought, man, this is crazy. This is not the way to do things. And got involved with ergonomics and start holding the company accountable for the heat index on the training. Wet bulb we would utilize to know what type of working conditions were, and we held the company accountable. So it just kind of gave me a sense of pride and honor to do something to leave it better than I found it, just to simplify things. And that's where I got my.
And, you know, and if you don't mind me saying so, it sounds like you were raised in the South. Is that right?
Absolutely, 100%.
And so, you know, we're born and raised in the South. My brother Adam over here is from Mississippi. I'm from here in Alabama. And you're in Kentucky right now. I don't know if you grew up there, but you know, being in the South, right? People tell us that unions are bad all the time. We are, you know, that we don't need somebody getting in between us and our employer, and that they do nothing. They don't do anything for workers except take our money. And you know, and so obviously none of us here believe that. But what was it that convinced you that, you know, all of this is all of that stuff that we grow up hearing around here is all just, you know, nonsense? It's not true.
You know, I grew up in a union household. My father was a Teamsters truck driver. He didn't talk a lot about unions, but I knew he was in a union. I knew I got taken to those union meetings. I saw these guys talking. You know, I saw them communicate, making plans, you know, talking about issues. And so I kind of had a little bit of unionism in my blood. But the main thing was my father just taught me the value of a dollar, hard day's work. Work hard, play hard, get in there and get it done. Take care of your family unit. And I think just the systemic outlook on unions, members just don't get talked to enough, you know, from their peers. My main thing is if you don't have a foot in the door, if you don't have a voice in the room, you don't have anything. And so many workers, I think, are so programmed to go work for the company store. They provide a check and they're taking care of me, but that's not true. You're going to work. You want to be treated fairly. You want a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. And I think these are good times, right? These times here are great times to have for people across the United States to go, damn, maybe there's something to this, right? You know, maybe there's something to having a union, and it truly is, because when you have a collective bargaining agreement with a company and you see how language can hold the company accountable, you see what you can do. You see what you can do for your brothers and sisters on the line. You know, I always said our union members have that sauce, that special sauce, but hoping them find it. With this strike, you're seeing members stand up, and we got so many intelligent people in that plant. I got a friend, Adam Hoback. He came to me about 5 weeks ago through one of the team leaders in the plant, and this guy is super smart. He's very intelligent. He's just got all these skills, and he said, man, I want to do this. I got to keep doing this. Matter of fact, I'm going to run for committee person. We're 2 years away from the election. He said, I don't care. This is what I want to do. So you're starting to see the solidarity come together, and these union members see them working themselves, right, through this process. And a lot of people are really turning heads. If you look at our union, we got 12,300 plus active workers. We got about 6,000 retirees and surviving spouses. And you know, the active workforce, you know, we're a right to work state, right? You don't have to belong to. Matter of fact, the union still has to represent you. We've got one member out of over 12,000 members that's not paying union dues. Wow. So that tells you, right, something's going on. Somebody's doing something right. And there might be something union stuff, you know, if you're not educated or you don't know what the union is. So I really lift that up, and I lift our membership up for believing in what we do.
Yeah, brother, that is wild. Maybe I might have to hit you up after this strike is over and get some of your organizers to come borrow them for my union, get our density up, because having one fella out of 12,000 that ain't paying dues is really amazing. And you know, you're in the South, you're in Kentucky, and companies like Ford, they come here to the South to get away from unions, to get away from higher wages and better working conditions and pensions. They come here to exploit us, right? We're the last stop on the way to Mexico. And y'all have nearly 100% membership in your shop. Y'all just went out on strike. Y'all produce the majority of Ford's profits. So, how do you keep up that level of solidarity among your Southern membership, and what can other unions, around here do to replicate some of the success that you've seen at 862?
My true belief is communication is key. It's king, king of the road, if you will. We're always broke as communicators, no matter in our personal lives or at work. And we're always trying to achieve a better communication process with our membership. Over time, grassroots, right? That grassroots committee walking through the plant. When I came through my ranks of leadership, I would wake up, get in there before work, walk in the membership, work all day, do the best I could to utilize the contract, but more so I used common sense guided by an earnest desire to serve my people with servant leadership. And I would walk out the door with them. And, that resonates with people. They understand that. They see that. It is what it is. It's what you put into it. And down here in Kentucky, you look at Toyota, right? So I can remember 18, 20 years ago, being a young lad there, a committee person, wanted to be a part of the solution. Going to Toyota Manufacturing down at TMK, Toyota Manufacturing in Kentucky. And we just got pummeled. We got just tore up. 50% card signed, wanted to be union, and we lost that election by a very large margin. It's somewhat depressing when we were there because we put a lot into it. But then we came back home knowing what we got under that kind of comfort level. But what I'm seeing now, I saw something on social media yesterday where a good friend of mine who's a member sent to me, and a friend of theirs' son works at Toyota. Right now, as we speak, we've got people that's got that cricket machine and they've made their own shirts or had shirts printed. Toyota manufacturing people are wearing UAW shirts in the plant on the factory floor, and I can't believe that Toyota hasn't tried to discipline them or fire them, supporting auto workers. So I think you're going to see some tides turn there as well. This is time to be union. The companies are making super profits. KTP alone, every minute, Ford Motor Company at the Kentucky Truck Plant is profiting $48,000 per minute, $220 million a week, $29 billion a year. And that's one plant at the Kentucky Truck Plant. So we make there 54% of all North American profits. Our leadership, you hear Bill Ford talk about, this is the family. We are family. Respect him, work with him, know him, good fella. But when it comes down to it, there had been times when, we felt like we were in the Ford family, but there's zero family feel at all. And that's something I've been sharing yesterday. We had 13 interviews. I think 8 of them were on national outlets, and they were saying, the best deal. Bill Ford said, this is the Ford family. And I said, I don't know of any person that I've talked to in Michigan Assembly, in Chicago, who I've been dealing with, on their strike, because we're, iron sharpens iron. We work with each other, or my members that are on strike. Nobody has that family feeling. You don't leave your family behind. And then on top of that, to keep us out of the battery plants, to keep us thwarted away from being a part of the electrification and electric vehicles, EVs, when that's coming. It's almost like their strategy is to divide us and conquer, and that's not going to happen. Our future is the future of all those around us in our community. 9 ancillary jobs, vendors, suppliers, mom and pop shops, restaurants are created for every one auto worker. People argue 9 or 10. So let's just take the 10 math, right? So there's over 120,000 people in our community that are also affected with the members of Local 862 between the Kentucky Truck Plant and Louisville Assembly Plant. If they don't think that our future is their future, then they're mistaken. And I know they know that because we're getting support across the board. Right now, Ford Motor Company, Stellantis and GM have about a 7% approval rating. So what does that tell you? That tells you that people in the community, unions, people seeing unions are supporting, and they're starting to understand what that is. And when you talked about in the South, about how so many members really take for granted unions or won't vote a union in, it's like you're voting against yourself, right? And all I would do is I would ask for people across the United States today would be just give us a look, ask questions, inform yourself, and then make a decision on whether you want to be union or not. And I think we're going to start seeing a big trend change and go the other way.
I think so. You're from your lips to God's ears, and so you mentioned y'all are on strike right now. You went on, and it's the Kentucky truck plant going on strike is notable for two reasons in my mind, and you touched on the first, and that's that y'all are Ford's moneymaker. I mean, $48,000 revenue a minute. That is more. Y'all produce more value for Ford than many UAW members make in a year in just 1 minute. Right. And so, I mean, that is really, really huge. But another reason that it's notable is because y'all were called out on strike in a different way than, the whole stand-up strike is different than the UAW has done over the past several contracts. But y'all were called out on strike even in a different way than some of the other plants were called on during this stand-up strike. And Sean Fain explained that on his live stream yesterday. And so I pulled a clip of him talking about how y'all went out on strike, and so Adam, let's play this, and then we'll go back to Todd.
All right.
And let me tell you the story of how the mighty Kentucky truck plant of UAW Local 862 transpired. For 2 weeks, Ford's been telling us there's more money to be had. They've said, hang on, we're close, but there's still some room to continue to sweeten the deal. On Wednesday, they owed us an offer, and they gave us a call. They wanted to meet over Zoom, and they wanted to pass the same economic offer that they passed 2 weeks ago with no more money. So we said, if you're going to offer us nothing, you're going to do it to our face with our full national negotiating team in the room. We went to Ford headquarters to see what they had to say for themselves. It was not a long meeting. They tried to give us the same deal that we rejected 2 weeks ago and not a dollar more. So at that point, I said, that's all you have for us? Our members' lives and my handshake are worth more than that. You just cost yourself Kentucky truck plant. We had management leave the room, and Vice President Browning and Kentucky truck plant chairperson John Jaggers, who's on the National Negotiating Committee, and myself made the call. And we let John make the call to take the plan out. We didn't wait till Friday, and we didn't wait a minute. We then called President Todd Dunn at Local 862, and he and his local leadership walked 8,700 members off the job. And of course, they had the unwavering support of Regional Director Tim Smith.
So, it really sounds like Ford was just kind of leading y'all on over the last 2 weeks. And, for the idea that they're going to give y'all an offer that's the same as 2 weeks ago and not expect any repercussions is just kind of wild to me. What do you think was in their head?
First of all, negotiating all three, big three at the same time, actually is a brilliant strategy because before you would see when it comes to contract time, they would pick a lead or a target, and then it's back to business as usual, and people kind of lose a little faith in the process. And when are we going to go? Even though everybody's negotiating, so this is good because it doesn't really whipsaw, but it challenges all three companies to try to be along the lines at the same time, and you can push for one, get something, and then come back to the other, work on it to the best of your ability to get something equal or greater. So, it definitely benefits us. It's more challenging because the complexity is higher, but it really helps. In this case, when we went out, I got a call Wednesday sometime around 3:30 in the afternoon. Sean Fain, President Fain, said, Brother Dunn, are you ready? Well, we had a pretty good playbook put together. I said, well, knock the dust off of it. Not much dust got on it because, it's only been about 4 weeks. We thought we were going on strike. But I think what happened is President Fain said, hey, look, y'all made some good advancements, with Chuck Browning. Chuck Browning, who is our National Ford Vice President, he is just a beast when it comes to career. I've watched him over the last 25 years. I've worked with him. He's led. Everybody is a team player. It's almost like the wolf pack mentality. And we've been disciplined and detailed. And that's what he said he wanted from the beginning and the start of this. So, when it came down to it, we're ready. And Sean said, hey, we may go south. And I think what happened is the company got complacent. They break a reprieve from another plant being picked because of the incremental and major advancements during the process. And, I know some folks said, well, Sean's got some different tactics, but I think some of those tactics, President Fain's tactics, helped us make bigger advancements, right? Segmental, incremental, I guess, moving forward moments, and I think it's been genius. But also, I think maybe the company might have feeling like he's predictable. He'll give us till Friday. We got 4 days. It really aggravates and angers me because, this whole Ford family mentality. You've got members that have been out on the picket line 4 weeks. Granted, yes, they said they were willing to strike. I'm not putting that on Ford. But, for Ford to take it serious over the last 2 weeks, what does that say about they care about those members that are on the picket line? Our members, I've got a guy I went to high school with, John Jaggers. He's a second-time national negotiator. Brilliant mind. I graduated high school. We split up, went our own ways. I went to war or tried to go to college, had to go to war during Desert Storm. But, it was just those I guess, again, I hate to say it, iron sharpened irons moment. Everything that we do in life, we gain something from. And in this case, with the strike, we're all putting things together and going, hey, Ford Motor Company really don't care. We've got to be prepared if called upon. And we had a couple hours to think about that as the top leadership of 862. And the meeting was at 5:30, and I think about 5:38. I got a phone call, and President Fain said him and Chuck Brown said, y'all do a great job down there. We're going on strike. What I was understanding that pretty much Ford Motor Company, when we told them at the national level that we were considering Kentucky Truck Plant, they said, do what you got to do. Okay. Yeah, that's bargaining in good faith, it's not. And President Fain stood up and said, Chuck, take them out. And literally, we got a call and had about 50 minutes to take 2,700 people out of the Kentucky Truck Plant. And we did it with as much finesse as possible. We left it like we found it, put tools back. We got to come back in here and build these trucks and get going again once we get the strike over with and egress out of the plant. We kept our salary nurses in there until that was over, and they're on strike with us. We've got 2 cleaning companies that work under JLL. They're laid off, but we're giving them strike benefits through our International Executive Board instead of worrying about unemployment, searching for 5 jobs. So here's the union really putting their arms, right, around our members in solidarity. That's why you see that wheel and why it's so impactful when you look at it. And we're not going to leave one member behind. So we're on strike. It's about $4.5 million coming out of our International Strike Fund to take care of the Kentucky Truck Plant at $500 per member. Louisville Assembly Plant will be affected probably sometime middle of this week. By the end of this week, I look for the Louisville Assembly Plant, which is 22 miles away from the Kentucky Truck Plant here in Louisville, to lay it off. And we worked with strike benefits. Working getting unemployment. Governor Beshear, Team Kentucky, a friend of mine. We worked together during the pandemic to help people with unemployment, our community, our members, and anything that he's asked for, we've supported. He was there for us. But, while this whole last week has been going on, we've been talking about it. I'm getting stories about Ford and Michigan on plants that are affected by a strike but didn't go on strike, that they were protesting and challenging the state on not to pay unemployment. And I'm thinking, okay, here's this Ford family attitude again. Let's step back and look at it. So you haven't been negotiating, or you haven't done anything but bring almost the same thing to us in the past 2 weeks, but you have been working on trying to deny somebody's unemployment who legitimately trying to get it, but they're affected by a strike. Where is your tactics, right? Where is your strategy coming from? And some of the news media have been asking about strategies about the UAW. Well, let's talk about the almost nefarious or evil-like strategies of Ford Motor Company. Right. Get back to the people. Let's get something going, and let us take care of our members. So, down here in Louisville, Kentucky, I told the governor, I said, Governor, I appreciate your assistance, but we've asked the International Executive Board to look at these 30-some hundred members out of the Louisville Assembly Plant and consider, and they had already basically given us the idea. So, those Louisville Assembly Plant members are going to be drawing strike benefits. They'll have to do a strike duty, if you will. They won't work the picket line, but we're working with Metro United Way. So we'll have almost 4,000 members next week volunteering in the community to do their 4-hour duty to give back. So now the community is going to see us give back through a strike. They're going to see what Ford Motor Company is doing and how they're acting. And so this is where all of this starts to come together, right? I don't want to start with a 98-piece puzzle, a 100-piece puzzle with 98 pieces. We're coming at this from all angles, and people are putting together this puzzle. They're going, wow, there's something to the UAW thing. There's something to labor unions. I'm also president of the Central Labor Council. We're 54,000 members, and not to go long in the tooth, but I've got to say on there how many other unions are helping us. Teachers gave us 5,000. State Fed came over and gave us 5,000 to help the strike. We're having unions come over, steel workers come over and brought burn barrels, wood from Louisville Slugger that they couldn't use. And all these unions are coming in from everywhere, out of state, out of county, to support us and say, hey, whatever you need, where you. So, it's not going to be too much longer for it to resonate with people who wouldn't think unions do something. And I tell you what, if you give a union a look, it'll help you out.
Absolutely. And I'm Secretary Treasurer of the Labor Council here in North Alabama, and the Spring Hill plant is only an hour and a half away from us, UAW 1853. And so we're waiting with bated breath to support them if they go on strike. So we'll be looking for that. And you're all of this stuff that you're talking about, I just want to underscore, like, this is it's almost a logistical nightmare for the people that have to put all these plans together. And so there's a lot of work that goes into that, just the planning part of it. And then the actual execution and getting these people out on strike and convincing them that this is good and this is what you should do and all of this kind of stuff. And I watched an interview that you gave to the Courier-Journal, which is a prominent news outlet in Kentucky. And you had we'll play this clip, and I'd like to get for the audience, and I'd like to get your reactions on the strike now that as you said in this interview from a couple of months back that you had to use this tool that had gotten rusty. Let's play this clip.
We hope we don't strike, but if we have to, that's a tool in a tool belt. It's dusty, rusty, and hasn't been used. But I'll tell you this, we've sharpened our tools and we're prepared to go into whatever it is. Don't want to say battle, but we're prepared to go forward and use every tool we can to get these jobs back to where they've kind of fallen short.
And so, like you said, you know, the strike tool at you know, Ford and Louisville and the Kentucky truck plant had kind of gotten rusty. And so what was the work that went into sharpening that tool and getting ready to execute?
So, you know, our executive board, we're an amalgamated local union. So for those listeners that don't understand amalgamated union is, so our union is comprised of about 12,373 approximate people. I think is what the number just come to my head. And the rest of the almost 20,000 are retirees. So you had retirees working a segment of the strike process to help out. Our standing committees are our backbone, our structure of our union. So these standing committees will be like Women's Committee, Veterans Committee, Civil and Human Rights Committee, Young Workers Committee, which is basically new members to our union. Consumer Affairs. So all these committees come together. So we asked them all to take on a responsibility. Our Recreation Committee basically has the kitchen duties. They're the ones making sure food's being prepared, water's on the picket line. So every team member, as we would call our UAW team, has a certain specific job and a protocol that we execute. And we worked really hard to make sure that communication that's normally broken, right, worked with our membership. And one thing that we've done has been really transparent with our members. With our UAW app is a one-way communication tool. There's not a back and forth. You don't have that Facebook and blogs and all that stuff. It's just simple, direct, precise information to put in the members' hands. So we've been trying to tell them every step of the way, you know, for so many months, prepare, save money, so many months, get your information in, get it changed so we can contact you, get your card signed so we can get you on a text alert system, and just walking them through every aspect of a possibility of a strike. And that hasn't been the last month, the last 3 months, the last 6 months, last year. It's been the last year and a half. So knowing this was coming, knowing these were going to be some difficult times. I mean, we've forced Ford Motor Company over the past year and a half, almost 2 years, to come up with some major corrections of leapfrogging some of the conditions that have occurred with the tier system that just brought so many other problems to the table, and forced Ford Motor Company and didn't really force them, but worked with them and negotiated in good faith, and they fixed a lot of things. So that told me Ford Motor Company knew they had to do the right thing, was worried, and wanted to show that they were working in good faith, and they did. But I think they were also then preparing. This is going to be a tough set of negotiations. You know, we helped save this company during the fall there of the auto manufacturing system. You know, we have Mitch McConnell. I can remember and hear the words in my head right now. Let the companies go bankrupt. Other companies will come in line behind. You know, if the American auto workers would have let everything go bankruptcy and go defunct, it would have crippled. It would have crippled America. I remember being at a brake supplier up near E-Town around that time, and they were working on voting on being union or not. And news media was getting involved, and one of the reporters said, "Well, what can you tell right now here, the people of this community, how a union is going to benefit this plant?" And that was the easiest question you gave me today. If I hit this, can I? And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "If we haven't done, we've done at Ford Motor Company to save Ford Motor Company, we would already have been done." I said, "Who manufactures brakes here at this plant?" They're like GM, Chrysler, Toyota, Nissan, Ford. I said, "So take three of those big three out of there, and then take that demand out. How many workers here are going to be laid off, or is this plant going to be here if we're gone?" Silence. It's the first time I ever heard a reporter become silent. And I said, "Exactly." I said, "It's all relative to an individual, an employee, a union member, based upon the outlook of what we're doing." And, you know, unions are so important and what we're trying to, the message we're trying to do, trying to get there. So it's a long road. I'm not going to be the last guy to try to put as much on the table, as long as we, like you said, leave it better than we found it, put another log in a wood pile, and let that next level of leadership, which I had been worried about, but what we're in right now, we've got a bucket full of great, basket full of great people coming up, and I think that they're going to step up and really take this and take it to new heights. So it's tough, but it's almost hair raising and honoring to see what I'm seeing. And I'm just showing our membership, here's the picture that you're creating, and it's not an aha moment. It's going to be there for a while.
So we've gone a little bit over, and I appreciate your time, and I want to be respectful of that. So we'll go ahead and wrap up here soon. But before we do, I want to end with a little bit of fun. I was telling you last night that I wanted to play this clip, but before yesterday, were you familiar with Jim Cramer?
Yeah, that is somewhat of a news celebrity with the market watch, if you will, who thought he was being cute. But for somebody to be loved and want to be a celebrity, to sit there and say on national TV, send the jobs to Mexico, they can build them for $5 an hour. I don't know how American he is, but I think maybe he ought to get a passport and head on out.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad deal for the United States. And so
they got radio in Mexico, don't they?
There you go. We can send his job overseas. But so last week, and there's been just clips just throughout the strike, and I guess it sounds like you've seen a few of them. And last week we got another one, and this is him reacting to polls about support for you and for your members. And so I'm looking forward to your reaction to it. Let's play this.
Where they got it. AP's got a piece this morning on public approval of either the automakers or the unions. You want to know percentage that favor the automakers?
Oh my!
It's like 6%, 9%, something below 10.
I was shocked at that. I thought that perhaps there would be people who say, you know what, I have a F-150, I love it, and they do a great job, and the workers are being greedy. And no, the workers win.
It kind of brings us all.
So what do you think about that, brother?
Open mouth, insert foot, back pedal across the river. Hope I make it over the flood wall, and I'll be sexy again when everybody forgets it. Yeah, I think he just realizes that right there that he'd made a big mistake. It is what it is. People across America see what's happening. The fat cats are getting richer. Farley, the money they're making, their jobs require a certain amount of tenacity, and the money they make is definitely going to be higher than us. But in a half hour, what he makes is exceeding the whole team at the Kentucky truck plant. It's not favorable for anybody to try and defend the profits, even our membership behind. So good. I hope he got a good taste of his own medicine there.
Yeah. Well, and it's baffling to me, kind of the idea that you would, because you drive a Ford truck and you like it, that you would feel sympathy with the owners of the company rather than the people who actually built the truck. That's just, why would that be the case?
Talking about looking a gift horse in the mouth or taking things for granted. I think he's going to back up and punt on this one and take a different road. Probably not to say anything about auto workers again if I was him.
Yeah, that would probably be better for him, but I don't know that he's got the humility to do that. So he's still on the air after 20 years of giving people bad advice. So
I don't have that button he hits during his radio show. I'll leave you for now. Yeah.
All right. Well, brother, I appreciate your time. Todd Dunn, president of UAW Local 862 at the Kentucky Truck Plant, just went on strike last week. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all for looking out for us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Todd. Solidarity.
All right. Really enjoyed that conversation. Went a little long, but I enjoyed it. We're going to go ahead and take our second break, and we're going to be back with our regular segments. Stay tuned.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and neighbors are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough to keep their jobs. We need to fix this. Let's close the health care coverage gap. To learn more, visit coveralabama.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm Attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller, broadcasting live, online, and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We've got about 70 folks watching us on YouTube and only 30 likes on the stream. What is the deal with that? Let's get those numbers up because those are rookie numbers. If you haven't liked the stream yet, please do. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. We're at 6.92 thousand subscribers on YouTube. Let's get that number up to 7,000.
That'd be nice, yeah.
Like I said, really appreciate everybody tuning in. A lot of folks enjoyed the conversation with Brother Todd. I enjoyed it. Miss Anonymous says Fain is awesome. Scott says most people don't even know what unions do. Free American 2020 says I think of GM being more hostile to workers and Ford as being more positive historically. That's generally the way that it's been. Ford has typically been better than some of the others. Scott says we need to educate the public about unions. Indeed. Art Walsh says GM's always attacking its workers. Indeed. Yeah. Appreciate all of the comments. This show rocks, says Notary. Jacob Jones says solidarity always, Adam. Marissa says great interview. Appreciate all of that. Thank you. Free American says maybe half of the viewers are company snitches. That's why they're not liking the stream. Maybe that's it. That could be it. You don't want to be a company goon. So like the stream, folks. Like the stream.
If you really want to show us up, do a super chat. That'll really prove your point, right?
That would really prove your point.
And shout out Zach, first time watcher. Welcome to the show. Appreciate it.
So I said we had two new advertisers. The second new advertiser is an old advertiser, but they're jumping back on the bandwagon. We appreciate that. It's Hometown Action. Hometown Action. So they've got this. They've got a climate canvas that's going on. They're doing a deep canvas, and so as labor union members, we face our share of challenges in the workplace. But today, I want to talk to you about a different kind of challenge: the climate crisis. We've all seen the fury of Mother Nature, the storms that can turn lives upside down in an instant, and that's why Hometown Action is launching our Climate Protection Project. We're heading out to 10 rural communities, listening to local folks, and taking action with them to protect communities impacted by climate disasters. And we need you, our union brothers and sisters, to join us. Together, we can make a difference. Our strength on the job is undeniable, and now it's time to put that strength to work for the planet. Let's protect our communities, our families, and our future. You can visit hometownaction.org today and sign up to volunteer for the Climate Protection Canvas. That is hometownaction.org.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate them jumping back on and appreciate the work they're doing.
Last week in Southern Labor, we talk about what workers in the U.S. South and her colonies were up to in the last week because nobody else does. So that's where we come in. Here's what workers in the U.S. South and her colonies were up to in the week ending on 13 October. In new NLRB filings, we had 76 workers at Controls Southeast in Pineville, North Carolina, file for a union election with the United Association of Plumbers, Pipe Fitters, Welders, and HVACR Service Techs, UA Local 421. The National Right to Work Foundation filed a decertification petition on behalf of anti-union employees, that's right, at Republic National Distributing Company, where the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 988 represents the 62 workers in Houston, Texas. 750 nurses at University Medical Center New Orleans in, you guessed it, New Orleans, Louisiana, filed for a union election with National Nurses United. 12 staff at SEIU Texas filed for a union election in Houston, Texas with Teamsters Local 988. 10 baristas at Starbucks in Atlanta, Georgia filed for a union election with Starbucks Workers United. The employer filed a petition challenging the bargaining unit at UPS Richmond Service Center in Richmond, Virginia. Current currently represented by Teamsters Local 592. 21 workers at Ready Refresh in Davenport, Florida, filed for a union election with the Teamsters Local 79. 45 workers at Motors and Armatures in Earth City, Missouri, filed for a union election with Teamsters Local 688. A very Teamsters-heavy election filing roundup this week. 13 workers at Half Price Books in Kansas City, Missouri, filed for a union election with the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 2. Anti-union workers at Moundsville Healthcare Center in Moundsville, West Virginia, filed a petition to decertify UFCW Local 1776 as the union representing the 34 workers there. Anti-union workers at DAR in Stuart, Florida, filed a petition to decertify the United Auto Workers International Union Local 2505 as the union representing the 224 workers there. 9 workers at Bourne Electric Company in Imperial, Florida, filed for a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 1. 23 workers at Starbucks in Denton, Texas, filed for a union election with Starbucks Workers United. Anti-union workers at Titan America in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, filed a petition to decertify the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 487, as the union representing the 75 employees there. 21 workers at Feast Barbecue in Louisville, Kentucky, filed a union election for a union election with the UFCW Local 227. 5 workers at Bimbo Bakeries in Fort Worth, Texas, filed for a union election with the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union, BCTGM, Local 111. 5 workers at Union Oil and Gas in Charleston, West Virginia, withdrew their petition for a union election with the United Steelworkers International Union, as did 2 workers at TV Oil and Gas in Winfield, West Virginia. They withdrew their petition for a union election with the United Steelworkers, and 54 security guards at Bering Straits in Washington, D.C. withdrew their petition for a union election with the Governed United Security Professionals. We had 2 election results, both a win in a clean sweep in the South last week. 41 workers at Ray Magnet Wire Company in Ashland, Virginia, won a union election 20-14 with the IBEW Local 666. I believe this is the second time they've tried to organize Ray Magnet Wire Company, so very cool to see a win this time. 88 workers at Cisco in Louisville, Kentucky, won a union election 60-5.
Nice.
That's like grad union win numbers. That's huge. With the Teamsters Local 89. Very cool. Had a few strikes and bargaining updates. Pharmacists at Walgreens across the country walked out for a day last week, primarily over staffing concerns. 4,000 UAW members at Mack Truck went on strike last week after voting down a tentative agreement by 73% that they say did not adequately address tiers, pension issues, and health care. 188 UAW members at ZF Manufacturing, a Mercedes parts manufacturer, are still on strike in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, as are Shangri-La dispensary workers with UFCW Local 655 in Columbia, Missouri. They began in May. Three Brothers Coffee workers with UFCW Local 1995 in Nashville, Tennessee have been on strike since June, as have Memphis soy protein production workers with BCTGM Local 390G. In policy, politics, and legislation, the Italian-American Trade Unionists of America put out a statement about Columbus Day last week, saying, "We only mention the SOB's name once a year, and it's when we announce that he's an SOB on his name day." Based on his writing and contemporary accounts, Columbus was a greedy, self-indulgent strunz, a jerk-off that gleefully engaged in the enslavement and genocide of indigenous people for personal gain and fame. Based on our organization's position that Columbus is a piece of crap, the organization maintains its position that Italian Americans, as well as indigenous people, deserve a holiday that truly recognizes our heritage and not one that celebrates a jackass. So very cool statement from the Italian-American Trade Unionists of America. I'm not totally sure how legit that organization is, but I like the statement. They put the same statement out every year. All right, so we've got our other regular segment, Boss Watch, where we do basically the reverse of Last Week in Southern Labor. Last Week in Southern Labor, we take a look at what workers are up to. In Boss Watch, we take a look at what bosses were up to. And folks, it's never good. We're going to head over to Oklahoma, where 3 federal workplace safety and health investigations that followed the April 2023 death of a worker at a Tulsa manufacturing facility found that the company exposed employees to struck-by hazards and identified 36 violations, including 25 serious safety violations of U.S. Department of Labor regulations. In its initial inspection, OSHA found an employee suffered fatal injuries during a pressure testing of a heat exchanger. With pressure at 2,600 pounds per square inch, one of the exchanger's plugs blew off and struck the employee. OSHA determined that the company violated the general duty clause for not keeping its employees safe. Further inspections at the facility identified 25 serious safety violations related to the following hazards: failing to keep exit routes free from obstruction, allowing a barrel of flammable chemical to be not grounded and bonded, failing to have an energy control program or provide related training, allowing the use of powered industrial trucks, slings, and lifting devices that were not in safe operating condition, failing to install required machine guards, not ensuring electrical equipment was maintained properly and in safe operating condition, failing to provide flame-proof shields or screens, and protective eyewear to welders and their assistants. The agency has proposed a total of about $276,000 in penalties for the 3 inspections. Accurate Manufacturing Incorporated has 15 business days from the receipt of these citations to comply, request an informal conference with OSHA's area director, or contest the findings. Heading over to Louisiana, the U.S. Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division found that Loop X LLC, a residential contractor specializing in pool construction, denied 25 workers overtime wages by paying them straight time rates for all hours worked, including hours over 40 in a work week. The division also learned the employer misclassified 3 of those employees as independent contractors, denying them eligibility of overtime and other federal benefits and protections. The agency recovered $56,000 in back wages to 25 workers. Construction workers often work long hours in tough conditions, and they deserve to be paid all of the wages they have earned. This includes overtime premiums for hours worked over 40 in a work week, explained Wage Hour District Director Troy Moten in New Orleans. We encourage all employers to review their pay practices and to reach out to the Wage and Hour Division if they have questions about their obligations. In Guam, the U.S. Department of Labor has debarred a federal subcontractor on Guam from seeking federally funded contracts after the department's Wage and Hour Division found the employer shortchanged 29 construction workers at the Marine Corps Base Camp Blas in Dadido and gave investigators falsified records. The action comes after division investigators determined that Danes Construction Corporation in Yigo violated federal regulations governing the employment of workers on projects supported by federal funds. Specifically, the division found the employer did the following: paid iron workers less than the required prevailing minimum wage rate of $14.84 per hour. They failed to pay temporary non-immigrant workers from the Philippines for all hours worked. They did not record hours worked or wages paid correctly. They paid workers straight time rates for overtime hours over 40 in a work week, and they willfully falsified payroll records, knowing they masked their record-keeping violations and failure to provide required wages. The investigation led to the recovery of $106,000 in unpaid wages, including $10,000 in damages for the 29 affected workers who were building housing units at the base. A 2015 division investigation found the same company violated federal regulations by paying employees straight time rates for overtime hours worked. The division recovered $8,000 in back wages for 17 workers affected in that case. The employer's repeated and willful violations of federal regulations led the department to assess the contractor with $6,750 in civil money penalties and to exclude them from submitting bids for federally funded projects for 3 years. Wrapping up with Virginia, the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs has entered into a conciliation agreement with Daikin Industries to resolve alleged race-based discrimination affecting black applicants at its Verona, Virginia facility. Pursuant to the agreement, Daikin Industries agrees it will pay $100,000 in back wages and interest to 98 black applicants. Daikin will also extend 3 job offers to identified class members. A routine compliance review by the OFCCP found Daikin Industries discriminated against the 98 black applicants for assembler positions at its Daikin Applied Staunton facility from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. So that wraps up Boss Watch. We've got a little bit of extra time. What do you want to hit, Adam? We've got the ZF updates. We've got talking about Decatur. Yeah. Which one of those you want to try to hit?
Well, let's just mention Decatur, I guess, and we've got a couple minutes left, and I just want to refer to some of the reporting that is happening there, if that works for you.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to mention, I want to highlight some of the reporting that Coyote Crown with AO.com has put out. He had an article out on yesterday, updated yesterday. It was published on October 10th, called Despite Arrest, Protesters in Decatur Vow to Continue in Wake of Police Shooting. And, of course, I'm referring to the police killing of Stephen Perkins, who was killed at the end of September by the Decatur police. And it's just a tragic incident, and there have been people protesting basically every day since then. And I'm hoping that next week I can have some more insight on this situation. I've reached out to some folks I know are involved in the protest and to get some statements and get some perspectives on the ground. But in the meantime, I did want to just highlight the reporting that Coyote Crown has been doing. I know that he has been really on the ground, spending time with folks to try to learn what's going on, to see how the community feels. And it's really unfortunate it's unfortunate, first of all, whenever we have violence in our community, but particularly when it comes at the hands of police. This man was killed in his own front yard. And the people in the community are banding together, demanding justice, demanding action from the city, from ALEA, the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. And unfortunately, we're seeing continued arrest of organizers and activists. For example, protest organizer Breonna Watkins said she counted 8 arrests for disorderly conduct over last weekend, including one for cursing and others for stepping into the street rather than remaining on sidewalks.
Oh my God.
Now, this is supposed to be a free country. It's supposed to be. And yet, we have armed agents of the state executing people in their front yard. And when his neighbors and his loved ones protest peacefully, they are arrested. And this is happening right here in Alabama. It's really disturbing. One of the latest updates came from the Decatur police, who have themselves now admitted that they, quote, erred when they gave their initial statements. Because initially, Decatur police said that Mr. Perkins did not drop a weapon, that he refused to drop a weapon. But they have since walked that statement back and have revised their narrative and said, quote, I want to share that in our initial rush to release information to the public on the morning of September 29th, we provided inaccurate information about the interaction between Mr. Perkins and the officer. And that is Police Chief Todd Pinion in Decatur. Notice there's not been a rush to release body cam footage. There was a rush to release a statement that has since been demonstrated to be inaccurate, but no rush to release the footage, no rush to arrest or investigate in any serious way the people responsible.
And this is really, just for a second, I mean, this is not necessarily always the case, but if the police, because the police obviously can release body cam footage immediately. And how do we know that? Because 3 weeks ago, there was a band director down in Birmingham that was harassed and arrested and assaulted by the cops. And they felt like the body cam footage would be beneficial to them. So literally the next day, we got body cam footage from that incident. So it can happen. So anytime you hear this nonsense about, oh, we can't do it because it's an investigation, it's BS. They're lying. They're lying to you. The cops are lying to you, telling you that they can't release the body camera footage. It's a lie. And you should be upset about that, small government people, anti-tyranny people.
Those are our tax dollars at work. We pay for these body cams, right? And we pay for the police, and we pay for the body cams on the police, and they're supposed to be there to protect us. And this is what happens. And so it's a real shame. I just wanted to highlight it. We had not mentioned it on the show, and it's a major situation happening here in North Alabama, particularly, for listeners outside of our Tennessee Valley. You may not have heard about it. And like I said, next week, hopefully I'll have a little bit more information from activists on the ground about what's happening. But I just wanted to highlight that. And, it's just, again, yet another instance of police violence. And I know that that's a controversial issue. I know that that's an issue that, again, maybe is a little bit outside of our areas of expertise. But when fellow working class people are victimized by the police, that's a working class issue. And that's how I see it. And I think when people peacefully demonstrate and they're met with police resistance, that's a working class issue. Because we know it happens at picket lines just as well as it happens at protests of police brutality. So, those are just some initial thoughts that I have about it. And, like I said, next week maybe I can have a little bit more, but it's just really despicable. And this comes on the heels of finding out that the killer cop in Huntsville, William Darby, has pled guilty to manslaughter and will not face any prison time, is my understanding. Yep. He's going to get time served. He's going to get 3 years of probation. And, again, while I'm happy that at least that case is over in a sense, and maybe that can help the family bring some closure, I think that's really disturbing that this person murdered our fellow citizen and won't face any serious consequences for it. Just really a shame.
District Attorney Rob Broussard, in explaining his agreement to a plea deal where the killer cop pleaded guilty to manslaughter instead of murder, he said that this was essentially the same deal we offered 4 years ago at the inception of this. Broussard said the plea offered then and now was in recognition of the job police do every day. I mean, just really gross stuff. Just because, he's literally saying because this guy who killed he's not even saying that it's because the facts of the case don't support murder. He's saying because this guy is in a group of special snowflakes, then he's going to get manslaughter, where any one of us would get murder. It's like actually sickening. I don't know. Sickening, gross, disgusting. That's how I feel about that.
It is, absolutely. So I just, want to send my love and solidarity with the family of Stephen Perkins, with the family of all those victimized by police violence, and with all of those who are out protesting and using their voice and asking for a better world where this doesn't happen, because it doesn't have to happen.
That's going to wrap it up for us on the first half of the program. We've got a whole second half of the program.
We do, and you want to tune in to Overtime. We got a great Overtime today. And
find us on,
we will open the phone lines for Overtime.
Yep. Find us on Facebook and YouTube. We have a some folks who have unionized started unionizing the VFX industry and the video game industry. We got a couple of them gonna call in, talk to us about that. We've got Taylor Barnes talking to us about Northrop Grumman covering up the deaths of 2 of their workers. Going to be playing some clips from a panel that the one of UAW's caucuses did on the fight for a shorter work week across the globe. So really cool stuff. I was on Left Reckoning, which is a YouTube show a while back. You can find my interview where I talked about the UAW strike and some people online who don't know anything about it. Adam was recently on America's Workforce radio podcasts, so definitely check those out. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, folks. Tune into Shop Talk, obviously. Thursday, we're going to have a good episode for you. And with that, we're going to head out. We'll see you next week if you don't follow us online for overtime. And we'll see you here in just a second for those of y'all who are sticking around. Solidarity. Okay, folks, that's it. We're off the radio. Howdy. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us. Like I said, man, we've got some great stuff lined up for overtime. We're really looking forward to it. Talking to some IATSE folks about organizing VFX and video games. Talking to Taylor Barnes, longtime friend of the show. We interviewed her in our first year on the air. So,
Blast from the past. Yeah,
Blast
absolutely.
From the past. Yeah.
Did you remember the dates when you were on Left Reckoning? What was that, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I think it was like 2 weeks ago,
okay,
maybe.
Cool. Yeah, so definitely wanted to lift that up. And also, like you said, I was on America's Workforce for Stage Management Day recently. So I got a chance to talk about being a stagehand and being part of IATSE. And I was also on Huntsville Progressive podcast recently.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had an episode on the Huntsville Progressive and basically just sort of told my story as an organizer, some of my work in education, labor, and with Alabama Rise, which segued into some conversation about Arise and the annual meeting they held, the new priorities for the new year, which are in, by the way. The 2024 priorities for Alabama Rise are in. The ones that did not make it, surprisingly, housing did not make it on the list, and payday lending did not make it on the list. I kind of expected payday lending, was a little surprised that housing did not make it. The new priorities would be comprehensive maternal and infant health care investments. That was kind of the new one that jumped on in. Death penalty reform, dedicated funding for public transportation, criminal justice reform, and voting rights were the other priorities. So those are just a few little updates I had to share as we transition here.
All right, well, let's take a break. We'll be right back, folks.
Come on, do poor workers good news to do. I'll tell how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
still listening to the Valley Labor Report, Alabama's only union talk radio show. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Appreciate you staying with us. Really looking forward to the second half of the show. We're talking to some folks from IATSE about unionizing the VFX industry and the video game industry. We're going to be talking to Taylor Barnes about her reporting on the defense industry. But first, let's talk about SAG-AFTRA. As you know, 160,000 actors with SAG-AFTRA are on strike right now. And there was a lot of hope and anticipation, and I think expectation, that after the writers were able to secure a deal for themselves that they ratified last week, I think it was, they ratified that deal, and it was a good deal. It was a pretty good deal. They didn't get everything they were asking for. I think they got about 50% of what they were asking for, but they also got quadruple what the companies were willing to give them when the strike started. So, good deal. Good deal overall. And so there was definitely an expectation that, okay, look, the companies have basically calmed down. They've got their temper tantrum out of their system, and so now they're going to negotiate in good faith with the actors. And unfortunately, it does not seem that that is the case, because on the 12th of last week, SAG-AFTRA released an announcement that contract talks had broken down, that companies had walked away from the table. And it's very unfortunate. And so here's their statement that they released last week. To our fellow SAG-AFTRA members, it is with profound disappointment that we report the industry CEOs have walked away from the bargaining table after refusing to counter our latest offer. We have negotiated with them in good faith, despite the fact that last week they presented an offer that was shockingly worth less than what they proposed before the strike began. So let that sink in for a second. After months on strike, the companies they offered a proposal worth less than what they went on strike over. Really bad faith bargaining, not a productive partner in negotiations. And so the union countered that terrible offer slap in the face with another, and the companies refused to submit another counterproposal. So industry CEOs have walked away from the bargaining table after refusing to counter our latest offer. These companies refuse to protect performers from being replaced by AI. They refuse to increase your wages to keep up with inflation, and they refuse to share a tiny portion of the immense revenue that your work generates for them. We have made big, meaningful counters on our end, including completely transforming our revenue share proposal, which cost the companies less than 57 cents per subscriber per year. Okay? That's crazy. How much do you pay every month for streaming services, all told? All told, I probably pay $50-$60 a month for streaming services, between 3 or 4 of them. And so what they're saying is, for each one, they want a revenue share proposal with 57 cents per subscriber per year, not per month. Right? So most of these, they're between like $10 and $20 a month. Okay, so let's just say at $10 a month, which is lower, I think, than even the lowest. I think the lowest right now is like $13, but just for easy math, let's say $10 a month. That's $120 a year. 57 cents divided by 120 is 0.475%. 0.5%. Less than half, much less than half, right? Remember, because some of these are actually coming on $20 a month now. So much less than 0.5% is what SAG-AFTRA is asking for from subscription revenue. They rejected our proposals and refused to counter. Instead, they use bully tactics. Just tonight, they intentionally misrepresented to the press the cost of the above proposal, overstating it by 60%. They've done the same with AI, claiming to protect performer consent, but continuing to demand consent on the first day of employment for use of a performer's digital replica for an entire cinematic universe or any franchise project. Right? So, I mean, think about any cinematic universe. The first thing that comes to mind should be Marvel. How many projects are in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And so under this proposal, you could have had the guy who played Hulk in 2006 sign this consent, and then forever in perpetuity, as long as it's in the same cinematic universe, he has no more say over that performer's digital replica. I mean, that's just a ridiculous thing to ask for. The companies are using the same failed strategy they tried to inflict on the WGA, putting out misleading information in an attempt to fool our members into abandoning our solidarity and putting pressure on negotiators. But just like the writers, our members are smarter than that and will not be fooled. We feel the pain these companies have inflicted on our members. Our strike captains, IATSE, Teamsters, and basic craft union members, and everyone in this industry. We have sacrificed too much to capitulate to their stonewalling and greed. We stand united and ready to negotiate today, tomorrow, and every day. Our resolve is unwavering. Join us on the picket line and at solidarity events around the country and let your voices be heard. One day longer, one day stronger, as long as it takes. Signed, your TV Theatrical Negotiating Committee. So, a really devastating announcement from SAG-AFTRA. Just really, really gross. Very unfortunate. But, these are vampires and ghouls, and they don't respect their fellow man. The Hollywood labor unions, they put out a joint statement supporting SAG-AFTRA. These being, who are all of these unions? Okay, here we go. And this is from IATSE. They, on their website, in a display of continued unity, the Writers Guild of America West, the Writers Guild of America East, the Directors Guild of America, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, the American Federation of Musicians, the Teamsters, the Hollywood Basic Crafts encompassing Teamsters Local 399, IBEW Local 40, LIUNA Local 724, OPC MIA Local 755, and UA Local 78. Issued a joint statement in support of the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, SAG-AFTRA, in their ongoing negotiations with the studios represented by the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, AMPTP. Here's the statement. Our members work side by side for the same handful of employers, and our unions and guilds collectively stand united more now than ever. Each day a fair contract addressing actors' unique priorities is delayed is another day working professionals across our industry suffer unnecessarily. At this point, it should be clear to the studios and the AMPTP that more is needed than proposals which merely replicate the terms negotiated with other unions. We collectively demand the AMPTP resumes negotiations in good faith immediately, make meaningful moves at the negotiating table with SAG-AFTRA to address performers' specific needs and make the deal they deserve. So, good statement. Good to see that support from the other Hollywood unions. And really gross that the producers are doing this. Totally unnecessary.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, I was sort of hopeful after the writers got a deal that meant progress was coming, but we'll see. I do love to see the solidarity from the other unions. We saw different unions like IATSE, and of course, which is my union, which I'm very proud to be a member of. but also the Teamsters, other unions that are impacted in the entertainment industry. Because a lot of folks are being impacted, not just the writers. I mean, not just the writers and the actors themselves, but anyone connected to the industry itself. So the studios are harming a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I suspect, I haven't seen opinion polls in the same way I've seen opinion polls about UAW and the Big Three, but I suspect that the American people are behind the actors and are behind the workers here and not the studios.
Yep. Yep. I've seen some opinion polls about that, and I can't remember the specifics, but it was very much in support of the workers and not the studios.
Absolutely.
Have we got our IATSE folks in the Zoom?
I do believe we do, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's bring them on. We've got some folks that have been at the center of some really big, some other entertainment organizing in the video FX industry and the video game industry. Now, the video FX industry is kind of unique in Hollywood because it's basically the only sector that is non-union, or that has been non-union before this kicked off. Now, IATSE has organized VFX workers at both Disney and Marvel.
That's
and
right.
I'm sure that we're going to be seeing some more. And we've got somebody from one of those campaigns. And we have somebody from Working Man Studios who was involved in the organization of that company. So welcome to the show, folks.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing good.
Happy to be here.
Hey, yeah, welcome. So I just wanted to start by giving each of y'all a chance to introduce yourself and kind of share your story. Tell us a little bit about what you do for work, what got you interested in unionizing, and of course, what got you involved in the campaign, and what have you been doing in the campaign? So Anna, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Anna George. I work in VFX, visual effects for Marvel Studios. Visual effects is interesting because it's kind of split into two sides where you have the artistic element of it and you also have the project management element of it. So I've been working for the project management element of it, working directly for Marvel on a couple of their previous Disney Plus shows. I've worked my way up, and now my next job title is going to be VFX coordinator. So essentially coordinating the artwork that comes from the different vendors they use on their shows and movies. I got interested in unionizing as someone who's only been in the industry for about a year. When I just realized that people, even in the same department, different protections from unions were being paid infinitely differently than I was being paid. Right. Someone on the same tier as me was being paid double what I was making. And it wasn't because their job was more important or because their job was harder. It was just because they were protected and I wasn't. So I met up with our organizer and we jumped in from there.
That is so awesome. Yeah, I love to hear that. And I mean, I think it's always remarkable when someone who's still pretty new, like, just jumps right in. But sometimes that's when it's the most stark, right? Because you are new and you're like really looking around and experiencing what you're experiencing, and you're starting to ask questions about what's going on. And trying to get the lay of the land. And sometimes that's when you get activated. And I know for my personal story, that was kind of the same situation. I started out as a teacher, and it was within my first year in the classroom. I was like, wow, this is not how it's supposed to be. We've got to do something. So yeah, I love to hear that. So thank you, Anna. And I'm curious about the video game industry. Matthew, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what got you involved as well?
Sure. Hi, I'm Matthew Vimislick. I am a project manager at Working Man, but I was an artist there for about 9.5 years before I got the job. And I got the promotion because all of our other project managers left. We had some pretty large layoffs at the beginning of this year. And it took everyone by surprise. It was just hi, everybody. Most of you are going to be let go, or a good chunk of you are going to be let go. And you'll find out by the end of the day if you still have a job, which really did not make relations with management much better. But then over the next coming months, just other people just kind of left for their own reasons. People had been around for like a while, and we lost a lot of tribal knowledge. That's where we lost our project managers. And at a certain point, like we kind of realized that if we did not make any big change, that our company was just going to like fall under and we were all going to lose our jobs. And if management wasn't going to do anything about it, then we were. The troublesome part with the company that we're with right now is that we are a client-based one. So we don't have any like products unto themselves. Like it is all run by labor. We work for clients like, Nickelodeon, Disney. We're just like making these games. And once we lose like really knowledgeable people, like that's really where we lose the business entirely. We don't have any many products of our own to go ahead and sell. So it was really important to all of our jobs that we unionize.
Wow, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And there was a couple of things that resonated with me, and one would be just how important the recruitment and retention of employees is in your situation, right? As you spoke to that client relationship and having people on staff with those experiences, with those relationships. And when you lose that, you lose a ton. So being able to retain folks. And also something you mentioned that really stuck out is basically having to save the company from itself. Is what kind of it reminded me of. And I've talked to a lot of workers in those kind of situations where they see, they want the company to be successful. They want to be successful in their own jobs. But they see things that are happening from ownership and from management that are really a detriment to that. And that can often be a spur into organizing. So I'm curious, Matthew, let's start with you. What all did you do during this organizing campaign? And tell us, how did it get kicked off? Because the thing that's really interesting about this campaign is the very first video game IATSE union, to my knowledge, right? So I'm curious, what got it started?
It was me just calling the friends I had at the company, the people that I trusted, where I knew even if they were like, that's a terrible idea, they'd tell me and it would just stop there. But everyone that I called, including one person who ended up confiding to me that like they were quitting anyway. So they were like, I'd love to do this, but I already got a new job. Everyone was in support, like absolutely everyone. So then once we started, like all of us split up the rest of the company, we're like, okay, you contact these people, you contact these people. And we slowly built it up until we had about like half of the people in our bargaining unit pretty much on board with the idea before a lot of us even really knew how a union worked or what, really those changes would mean, other than just we would have a union. Once we had those numbers, just a small group of us, we reached out to some other union organizers. We took some classes, we read books, and finally we reached out to IATSE, who, was happy that we'd done a lot of the work so far, but they kind of took us back to square one and made sure that we really made sure that our numbers were set. And, I'm really glad that we worked with them. We ended up getting a unanimous vote when we got up to our election. So, obviously whatever they advised us worked out pretty well.
That is huge to have a unanimous victory. And you mentioned an election. So I take it the company did not recognize the union, right? They had the option, but they chose not to recognize.
I think they were also not quite sure what the whole process was. I'm pretty sure they just Googled some stuff and rolled with it. They came to us at first with, we'll have an election by like a neutral third party, and there are companies that do these sorts of things. So we were like, okay, cool. I hadn't really heard about that before, but that sounds pretty great. IATSE was really on board with it. And then later on, they came back to us and they said, hey, turns out there's this whole branch of government that has like a agency that does these elections for us. So we're just going to do that instead, which ended up putting the whole efforts off by a month. Obviously, like if they were really trying to like stomp the union and like really slow stuff down as much as possible. That was a really great move. Honestly, I think it just kind of came out of a place of ignorance, but as much as they try to use verbiage that says like they're positive, they're really like encouraging of it, they've still done a lot of like really small things and really small statements that, really kind of echo away at the work that we've done. Probably the one that hurts the most is they kept saying congratulations for joining the union when like we went through the hard work of forming a union, which is a totally different thing. So yeah, maybe not the most receptive, but I've definitely heard it worse.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I appreciate you sharing that experience because it is new for the video game industry. And so it is like conceivable that a lot of people in corporate management are not going to be familiar with the union process or what it means when their workers want to unionize. And something else I think that's worth highlighting there is that there's a broad spectrum of responses from companies. And of course, listeners to our show are familiar with Amazon and Starbucks and like how extreme a union busting campaign can be, but it really varies wildly. And you also have companies that are like collaborative and recognize the union right off the bat and everything in between. So those experiences really just vary from place to place. But yeah, I just want to emphasize something you said, which is starting the union from scratch, like starting in a new shop, going through that process of building an organizing committee and splitting up the employees and talking to folks. That's hard work. It's important work. And so I just really want to congratulate y'all on doing that and being able to win unanimously. I think is just really a testament to your organizing and a testament to the hard work and the unity that you were able to build.
Thank you.
And Anna, I'm curious about your campaign. Tell us a little bit about how things got kicked off at Marvel VFX. What were some of the issues and how did the process play out there?
So I worked closely with our organizer, Mark Patch. The biggest thing is what you were talking about, where you spend so much time just talking to every single individual employee. You need to know that every employee that you're working with is going to be voting yes, and that this is what they want. And I think it was resounding at Marvel. As long as I've been there, it's something that we've talked about. And what you hear in the VFX industry all the time is how badly this was needed. And so I worked with him, just reaching out to people. It's luckily a small enough community that you can text your friends and they can text their friends, and next thing you know, you've spider webbed into chatting with everyone and getting that resounding yes that we were really excited about. From there, it was then making sure that everyone understood how the ballots worked, so when the vote happened, it could happen quickly and it would happen effectively, getting people the shirts so that they could be proud of being a part of IATSE, and also doing all of this without necessarily alerting the company that it was happening, because we wanted to have our solidarity and our understanding there first before we went to Disney.
Right. And that's something that is important. It's not that you're like hiding anything per se. You're not like, being secret spies or anything like that. It's just there will be a time when it's right to talk to management and to let them know, hey, we're a union, here's what we're about. And you just want it to be that right time after you've developed those relationships and built that solidarity, like you said. And a lot of it really is as simple as a phone tree and figuring out who's going to call who's going to text who, and take notes on those conversations and see where those conversations lead you, and get to know the issues that people have, because what you think are the issues may not be the issues for every single person. What resonates with some people won't resonate with others, and listening to what those issues are is so important. And I'm curious, were there any just like real hot button issues that really were motivating workers at Marvel VFX? Was there anything that really stood out that's like, what, we ought to fix this?
Yeah, so I think The unanimous one, the one that everybody is on the side of, is higher pay. I remember a conversation I had with a coworker where I was telling her, if I could just make this amount of money, like if I just could get to this point in my career where I was making this amount, that I would be set for life. I would never need a raise. I'd be so set. And as I told her this, she's in the Editors Guild. And as I was telling her this, I finished and she just looked at me and she went, "That's so sad." Because the number that I was dreaming about was $500 less a week than her minimum that her union required. And so like that kind of speaks, I think, to how like desperately we deserve to be on the same pay rate as a majority of the industry. That was like one of the big conversations I had with a lot of people. Additionally, the way that overtime works in our industry is really interesting. So for both of my positions, I was hired with a 60-hour minimum. And on at least one of the shows, I met that 60-hour minimum every week. On the second show I was hired on, I was hired with a 60-hour minimum with the understanding that there would be no daily overtime, even if I worked it. If you work, instead of your 12-hour day, you work a 15-hour day, there won't be any overtime. So that's something that a lot of people have been hired with the understanding of, and they need to see gone. We have to get rid of it. It's so dangerous for all of our workers to not be receiving the compensation they deserve for overtime, especially when we are working these crazy hours. Additionally, it gets rid of the incentive on the company to not work overtime if they don't have to pay us overtime. It allows them to just kind of, use us as workhorses without having to think about the consequences of a 15-hour day.
Right.
And so
absolutely.
I think that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, that is huge. I mean, and that really sticks with me, what a persistent issue that is for workers all over this country in so many different industries, right? We see the UAW is fighting right now for a shorter work week. And it's not because realistically they expect all their members would only work 32 hours a week. It's because they know they're going to be asked to work well beyond that, right? Beyond even 40, into the 50s, into the 60s. And there has to be an effective deterrent for companies to, otherwise they will use and abuse you and exploit your time. And it is dangerous for workers to not have that time. It is unhealthy for workers to not have that time. We fought for the 8-hour day and a 40-hour work week 100 years ago. And we have folks like yourself who are out there doing 60-hour weeks. And it's just really, it's an issue that I think is so widespread, and I think that's one of the reasons why having a union is so important. Being able to address this, to come to the table with management and really bargain over your time and what the value of your time and the benefits that you should receive for your time. I think that's huge. And so one question that we got from one of my IATSE 900 brothers was for you, Matthew, which was about the video game industry. And, because unionization is so new in the video game industry, you may not have a lot of insight here yet, but I'm curious, are there any companies that have been pro-union or, kind of at least positive neutral in this process? Or what about the reverse? Have there been any companies in the video game industry that have been really notoriously anti-union that we should know about? And not to put you in a delicate situation where, obviously if you don't want to speak about it, or if there's some concerns there, I don't want you to say anything that you don't feel comfortable saying, but we did get that question about kind of like the lay of the land in the video game industry with unions.
I'm just trying to remember specific names. There was one company recently where their QA department had unionized, and their contracts ran out, and the company decided just not to renew those contracts. And that's kind of one of those things where it's hard to tell if that's strictly anti-union, or if that's just, the game industry as a whole, just how they operate things. We'd had so many layoffs in the past month and a half throughout, the entire industry. So many companies have let go of so many people, but that's kind of been the environment here for the past 20 years. When I started in the industry, I thought every year I was going to get let go because you would just constantly get stories about this sort of stuff.
Right.
So at a certain point, it's not really that a lot of the companies are anti-union as much as they are designed to be anti-employee. When they're designed to be anti-employee, they just kind of end up being anti-union. As far as companies that have been open and receptive to it, I vaguely recall Double Fine, the company that does Psychonauts. They did that like heavy metal, like action RPG strategy game. I vaguely remember the CEO or founder or whatever talking very favorably about unions and how the industry has to unionize. And then a lot of us just talking about like, yeah, but Double Fine's not unionized. That's a really strong statement to make when, your company, is not unionized. So
Ooh,
for the
you
industry as a whole, I'd say probably negative.
yeah, you just touched on something really interesting there, which is like, you've got these companies that don't always practice what they preach. You have some companies that put out progressive rhetoric. We've seen that like in the nonprofit industry. We've seen some really tough campaigns in the nonprofit industry where these employers that are ostensibly progressive and like, well, in some cases even say pro-union things in their programming, but it's sometimes a different story when it's their own employees that start to organize. But something else that you talked about in terms of the industry itself and how it is really geared against the employees, to me speaks to the need for unionization. And when you talk about layoffs and how persistent those can be and the persistent fear of layoffs, I think about how in a union contract you can fight for protections around layoffs, even if it's as little as just getting adequate notice, right? So that you don't have that scenario happen to you again where you walk in to work one day and you're told, well, some of y'all are not coming back and you'll know by the end of today. That kind of situation is just really not acceptable for working people to experience. So whether it's getting an adequate notice in advance, getting severance packages, getting protections from layoffs, protecting your time and the work hours and overtime. There are just so many reasons why, whether you're in the VFX industry, the video games industry, or so many other industries, why a union is good and why a union is necessary to make your lives better. And so I really appreciate both of y'all for your courage and for paving the way for folks in IATSE and for workers across the country. And I wanted to give y'all a chance and just see, do you have a question for your other panelists here about the campaign that they experienced? So I was just curious, Anna, Matthew, if either of y'all had a question for the other one.
I do, if possible. So we're in our very, very early stages of the negotiation committee. And I was wondering if you guys have hit that stage yet and what you're doing to prepare, because we're in that part and I'm, finding my footing, but it's intimidating, definitely. And I was wondering what that was like for you guys.
I was going to ask you the same thing. I think we've been operating on the same timeline. No, literally, one of the weird parts of having this campaign so close to you guys and within the same parent organizations the whole time, we're like, oh, they're kind of stealing the wind from our sails because that's exciting, all the Marvel stuff. But it's been really amazing, just like, oh no, like a lot of these articles are like kind of putting us together or putting us in the context of like larger movements. So it's always just really interesting going like, oh yeah, it's not just our company, it's every company. So
hell yeah.
Absolutely. And I hope we can link arms in this as we go, especially since we're on the same page, that we can, really take these steps together and battle the intimidating wall of the negotiation committee.
Yeah, absolutely. I really hope that too. I think there's just a lot of strength in collaboration. And so, yeah, I definitely encourage y'all to be in collaboration as much as possible and bounce ideas off each other and learn from each other and have each other's back. I think that's huge, and it has been really cool as an IATSE member to see this happening. To have Marvel, Disney, and a video game company all within this same little time period has just been really exciting. One of my roles with the local 900 is political coordinator, and so I give a report every month basically talking about what's happening in IATSE. And it's been really exciting to share with our members these kind of wins, to win unanimously, to be the first union in the particular industry. It's just huge. And it really, I think, empowers other workers to realize it's not just me. I'm not alone. There are other folks who feel this way, and there are other folks who are doing something about it. And I love that. So I wanted to wrap up here and just give each of y'all a chance to kind of give some parting words about the campaign, anything you've learned, anything you want to share with fellow IATSE members, or just working folks more broadly about labor organizing and your experience.
I would just say that, at the end of the day, it's not about any one company. It's about bringing the VFX workers up onto the same tier as the majority of the industry, and just send out a thanks to all of the other departments who have paved the way for us to be able to do this and made our next steps so straightforward, because they've allowed us to look out for what we need to look out for. And I think they're going to allow us to get what we deserve at the end of the day.
And Matthew, how about you?
I don't know. I guess I would say I'm just really excited to see what the next few years are going to be like. It's been a meteoric rise in the number of unions across so many different industries. And I'm just, as much as work as we're putting into our own union and as much work as we're putting into our own negotiations, we're putting just as much work into just looking and talking to people at the, with the industry at large. And I'm just really excited to see what comes out of all this.
Absolutely. And I did think of one last question. I would be remiss if I didn't ask y'all before I let y'all go. Any cool projects that you're working on? So Anna, Marvel VFX, you got any cool project that you're about to be assigned to?
Not at the moment. Right now, I think we're mostly putting all of our solidarity and support behind SAG as we wait for them to get what they deserve so that we can get the industry up and running again.
Copy
Unfortunately, sorry, I don't have anything exciting.
Matthew, how about you?
I think most of the stuff I'm on is NDA. I think the last project that came out was for the Paw Patrol movie. So go see the Paw Patrol movie, I guess.
Well, I just want to say again that I appreciate y'all's time, making some time to talk with the Valley Labor Report this morning. It means a lot to us, and it means a lot to me as, just as someone who is a member of the union and as someone who wants to see unions grow, to know that y'all are doing this in new areas really means a lot. So I appreciate it. And y'all keep up the good work.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, folks. That was a great conversation. Enjoyed hearing from them. It's always good to see industries start to unionize. So we're looking for not only unionization, but good contracts in that industry here.
That's right. Yeah. That's always going to be, one of the interesting things to see is when you get to bargaining time. But I love that they are breaking new ground in those areas, because the video game industry desperately needs unions. In the VFX industry, like you mentioned at the onset of the interview, just this pocket of non-union workforce that's been easily exploited as a result. So shout out to both of them. Shout out to IATSE for really pursuing this new organizing. It's necessary.
Tell folks about Shop Talk, Adam.
Oh, okay. Sure. I can do that. So Shop Talk is our Thursday morning episode, started back in the spring. It is a solo project that I do. And since we started in the spring, I've been doing a monthly labor history series where I talk about what happened each day in labor history with a particular emphasis on the South. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but we do have some fans of that particular series who seem to really dig that and look forward to it every month. I've talked about educator organizing and strikes in Alabama, busted out my old AEA history textbook. Talked about the Alabama cooperative town founded by the Knights of Labor called Powderly. I've done some different training episodes. So labor Shop Talk is all about labor education, history, and training. And some of the training we've done would be new employee orientations, effective flyers, knowing your rights as a union member. And it's not just me. I've had on some really great guests on Shop Talk. A couple weeks ago, I had on Erica from the Workplace Justice Project in New Orleans. Our Tennessee sister, Vonda McDaniel, who was listening this morning, she joined to talk about labor councils. A friend of the show, Chris Townsend, has been on to talk about his work getting lost classics of the labor movement back in print. Longtime labor organizer Bill Berry joined to talk about closing up the open shop. Courtney from Labor Notes joined to talk about race and labor, which I really enjoyed. And that's just one of the Labor Notes episodes we've done. Every month I have a special Labor Notes themed episode where we talk to someone from Labor Notes or talk about an article from Labor Notes. We just work with them to put together something every month. So we've also talked with Ellen David Friedman about the training she does with them called When Your Union Breaks Your Heart. We've had on Joe DeManuel Hall about Stewart's Corner. We've had the Labor Radio Podcast Network guys on the show. And these are just some of the episodes. So I definitely encourage you to check out our Shop Talk playlist on our YouTube channel, as well as the back catalog of podcasts. It does come out as its own podcast every week. So again, if you're looking for any labor education, history, or training, hopefully you'll find some stuff that's useful. Unlike our Saturday show, it's not as newsy, so it's one of those things you can go back to as it's relevant, as it's useful for you. And I've got some good ones coming up. Quick programming note, next week I'll be talking with Lisa from Labor Notes about 10-minute meetings inspired by the UAWD. This one will actually be at 10:30. Normally we air at 9:30 a.m. Central Time on Thursday mornings. This one is going to be at 10:30. And then I'll have a couple of collaborations with Jacob here that we've got in the works regarding some UAW history. I've got Sarah from Strike for Our Rights coming on in November. I've got November labor history. So yeah, I've got some good episodes planned, and we just really wanted to lift up Shop Talk and make sure that all of our listeners were aware of it. And let us know your ideas if you have particular areas of training or education or history that you're interested in and that you want to learn more about. Hit us up. Let me know because I want to make it useful for folks. I want it to be educational for folks. And so we do have a couple clips from Shop Talk that I wanted to play just to give y'all a taste of kind of what we've been talking about over the past couple weeks.
The idea was that the ability to do democracy, to run democratic institutions is a skill set, right? You have to be able to, you have to be able to run meetings. You have to be able to build consensus, right? You have to be able to delegate tasks and follow up on them, right? There's a lot of organizational skills required. So that's basically what we teach the kids, and the kids help run the camp with us. Or not help. I mean, it's just we run it as a consensus model with the kids. So that includes off season. They are in meetings making decisions about budget, about timing, about recruitment, about staff personnel. They interview our staff, right? So all the major decisions they are an equal part of. And like I said, we use a consensus model. So that is teaching them the skill set required to create and run their own organizations, right? As they identify problems in the world that they want to solve, they're going to have the ability to organize people to address them. So that, and the camp's name is Lamplight. And again, it's in Gunnersville.
So that was this week with Kevin Burns from the Sound Mountain Cooperative Education Center. Really enjoyed that conversation. We talked about co-ops, we talked about employee ownership, and we talked about that summer camp that he's involved with, Lamplight, that is really cool and helping young folks practice democracy. I love that. And as I mentioned, I had Erica from the New Orleans Workplace Justice Project on the show a couple weeks ago and really enjoyed that conversation as well.
You want to ask your employer 3 things. 1, how much are you going to be paid? Is it going to be by the hour? Is it going to be by the day? Is it going to be by the week? Usually in those first jobs, oftentimes it's an hour. So if you're getting paid $10 an hour, you want to know you're getting paid $10 an hour. The second thing you want to know is how are you going to be paid? Are you going to be paid by check? Are you going to be paid by cash, which is legal in Louisiana? And if you are being paid in cash, please ask for a receipt. Are you going to be paid, and how often? And then the last thing you really need to know, the third thing, not the last thing, the third thing you really need to know is who is your employer? Who's your boss? Who's your supervisor? Who has authority over your employment? And also, who are you actually working for? We have so many workers who come into us who, sometimes are given a shirt by their employer with the name on it, but turns out that's not actually who the employer is. So the reason to ask these 3 things is that they're very important things to know. And the other is if the person you're talking to, the manager, your supervisor, whoever it is a little squirrely about that, that's a sign that, do this job, but maybe start looking for another one, because employers that aren't willing to be upfront about those basic conditions of employment are, that's a red flag that there might be trouble down the road.
So that was 3 things that you needed to know about a new job. And also we had one right that you might not have.
The thing that you don't have, if you don't have a minimum wage law, or if you don't have a state law that provides for this, is the thing that we see is, first of all, if you work for a small enough employer, you might not have a right to a minimum wage at all. Although most employers, we find, at least honor the federal minimum wage of $7.25, even if maybe they're not. But there's specific jurisdictional requirements for employers to be bound by all of the terms of the Fair Labor Standards Act. And the one that we come across the most is not the minimum wage, it's the overtime provisions. So the example that we have had before with clients is workers who work for a small restaurant. It doesn't meet the jurisdictional requirement of $500,000 in gross sales for all of its employees to be covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act. And if you work in the back of the house as a dishwasher, and you're making $7.25 and they have you work 50 hours a week, you don't have any right to overtime because you're not covered by the federal law that says you have to get overtime. And we don't have any state provisions for overtime because we don't have a state minimum wage law and we don't have any provisions for overtime. So it's just something to be aware of. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can really do about it except to keep fighting to try to get a minimum wage and overtime law that would be enforceable at the state level. But it is just something to know. And it's not one of those things you're going to ask on the first day, because most employers don't even know, small employers don't even know if they're covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act, but just something to be aware of, that if you work on those in those small margin industries, or, for sort of fly by night or smaller employers, you might not even have the basic protections of federal law.
And it wasn't just bad news, though. There was at least one positive right that you have that Erica discussed.
One of the things that's really important, especially for us down south, because we don't think about it so much, we have very low union density, and people tend to think of organizing rights, the right to act together with your coworkers, as only coming in the union context. But I have heard on more than one occasion from our colleagues at the National Labor Relations Board that they are looking for cases of protected concerted activity. So if you are a worker, or you and your coworkers have concerns about conditions at work, about how you're being paid, about what you're being told about your working conditions, and any of you go either as a group or one of you specifically on behalf of the group, that is a protected right. And your employer should not, it is illegal for your employer to take action against you for that. Doesn't mean that they won't, but it is a violation. It is potentially a violation of the National Labor Relations Act. So organizing together is protected. If your employer tells you you're not allowed to talk to your coworkers about how much you make and who makes more, that is not true. That is a protected right. And so you should understand that talking to your coworkers, acting together for your own benefit is a right that you have under federal labor law.
So there's just a little bit of what we talk about on Shop Talk, labor education, history, and training. Check it out every Thursday morning on YouTube and Facebook. You can also check it out later as a podcast. And again, I appreciate everyone who tunes in. I appreciate all the good ideas folks have sent me. And if you do have good ideas, send them my way.
All right. And up next, we have Taylor Barnes. I believe she's in the Zoom now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic. Taylor Barnes is she has been for a long time a freelance reporter. She's been doing a lot of stuff for Inkstick Media, so I'm not sure if she's on staff with them or not. But particularly, she is on the defense beat. So we met a few years ago now when she was doing some reporting on Huntsville, and she's got a couple of new stories out that she's put in a lot of work on, and so we're excited to have her share that with y'all. Taylor, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. And so are you staff with Inkstick Media, or are you freelancing for them?
Yeah. No, thanks for asking. So nowadays I am indeed staff, and I was freelance for 12, 13 years. And so being a freelancer for so long, I think goes hand in hand with my interest in labor stories.
Yeah, I imagine that'll give you some personal experience with precarity for sure.
Right.
So your most recent story is, like I said, out in Inkstick Media. Definitely, you're going to want to check it out. The title is Dying to Make Hypersonic Missiles in Utah. What is this story about?
So this story dates back to January of this year when a colleague sent me a tip. So as you mentioned, I cover the defense industry. I really cover the people and places tied up in, the United States, nearly $1 trillion national security budget. And in the workplaces, of course. So back in January, a colleague sent me a tip and said, Taylor, there was a death of 2 workers at a Northrop Grumman plant in Utah, and the company's being extremely tight-lipped about it. So Northrop Grumman is one of the top 5 defense contractors in the U.S., and sort of in my field, they're called the Big 5, the top contractors that really dominate the defense contracting market. And Utah's a really important place for both Northrop Grumman and the defense industry in general. It's like Huntsville, missile and rocket hub. And so, the colleague sent me that tip, but then the company didn't even release the man's name. They said nothing about the circumstances of the death. And nothing on local news. There was a brief statement from the company saying, out of respect for the workers' families, we're not releasing their names. So I had to start digging through public records. I requested police reports. I requested OSHA reports. A lot of them took a long time to be made public. I finally reached out to the families. I found their names hidden, buried in these reports. I reached out to a coworker and really found out where families told me that, no, that was not their wishes not to be named. That was the company's. And that sort of suppressed media coverage and kept them sort of off the public radar. And after getting reports,
the mothers of one of these people said, you mentioned in your piece that she said that she felt really, disconcerted with the secrecy around her son's name.
Yeah. So I have to say, when I saw the statement from the company saying, out of respect for the workers, we're not releasing their name, that kind of already made my antenna go up because, it's plausible. Maybe indeed the families wanted privacy, but generally, if your loved one dies, you and your family, your families and friends know about it, and most people want their loved one who dies to be remembered and be remembered as a person with a name. So yeah, the mother of one of the men who was killed on the job told me that she really didn't like the secrecy, and it sort of it was a bit of salt in the wound because it came with this implication that her son had done something wrong, as though he were responsible for his own death. When that's not what OSHA would say after a 6-month investigation. OSHA would say the exact opposite. They use their most serious classification in the death, which is called willful serious. And it boils down to the men were in a confined space where argon gas was known to leak, and they had no protective gear, no breathing apparatus, no, pulley harness system to get them out of danger. And argon gas will displace oxygen. That's the purpose of it in welding. And asphyxiated the men in just a matter of seconds.
And just to kind of illustrate, I found this was just stunning. Just to illustrate how quickly this happens, you recounted in your piece how after a certain time, some of their coworkers were like, "Hey, where are these two folks?" And so they start looking around, and they, through a couple of clues, they figure out, oh, they're down here in this confined space, and so they go down to look for them. And you can tell me if they get to the bottom or if they don't, but after you said just a few seconds, this person starts feeling dizzy. He crawls up out of the hole, and he gasping. He can barely breathe, and he has to be pulled away to get medical treatment, I think.
It's extraordinary, exactly. So the two coworkers who noticed that they didn't show up in the locker room and the break room go looking for them, and then go down to the area they call the pit, which is below an autoclave. And this is literally underground. So again, this oxygen, this gas, argon, is heavier than air and will displace air. And here they are in an underground space where argon is leaking. And the two coworkers went looking for them. And one just told police that he was in distress because he was gasping for air, trying to get out of the space where his coworkers had just suffocated. It's a horrible story. And I imagine plenty of your listeners who might even be familiar with this gas and familiar with confined space entry will know that in industrial workspaces, sort of confined space entry is a whole area of sort of study and of training. This is not something you take lightly. OSHA defines confined spaces in a few different ways, one of them being a space that's not meant to be continually inhabited, a space that has a risk of oxygen deprivation, which is clearly what's going on here. And sort of the heart of what went wrong at this workplace was the workplace decertified the area as a confined space, and therefore they didn't have to act on the sort of safety measures like giving them supplied air or having some sort of system to retrieve them. Instead these workers just walked down in their normal clothes into the confined space and asphyxiated in a matter of seconds.
And so the fact that they decertified it, so it used to be an area where the company required these type of precautions, and they took it away. Have you been able to figure out like what it was that made them feel like, oh, no, we don't have to do this anymore?
That's the really curious thing. There's nothing in the OSHA report about it, and the company never answered either my request for comment nor actual investigators saying, look, why did you decertify this as a confined space? And according to the OSHA report, the company provided no documentation about who made that call. Were they a qualified person to make the call? From the time I heard about the incident onward, I have asked the company for comment so many times by phone call, by email. Gotten no answer, nor did the OSHA investigators.
And so you said that the OSHA investigators said that this was willful and serious. What does that mean? What did they find? Why did they come to that conclusion?
Yeah. So willful and serious, I should note, so this was the result of the 6-month OSHA investigation. And willful and serious meant the company knew this was a hazardous space. It knew this was at one point indeed what they called a permit required space. and simply remove the requirement to, have safety measures and safety procedures to go into it. And the company, of course, had 6 months to prove to OSHA otherwise, and nothing in the report indicates that, why they removed the requirement, what they were doing to, enforce safety. Otherwise, I should note that the company is appealing. However, neither OSHA nor the company gave me any information on their appeal. And I was told by a workplace safety expert that in cases of deaths like this, that a company always appeal, even if there really is no substance to it, and that it's a way of dragging out the case and sort of exhausting the families.
And so, they died, and one of the things that the supervisor tried to tell the mother of one of these people was that her son was a hero for doing the work that he did. Can you talk to us about the work that he did, and the extent to which the things that he created have actually been used?
Right. So this astounded me. The mother of the younger worker of the pair that were killed told me that a supervisor approached her and said, your son is a hero on the other side of this life because he died defending our country because he was making weapons. The supervisor told her that he was making hypersonic missiles. So I asked Northrop Grumman for more information. What type of hypersonic missiles? Can you give me any more information on what these missiles do? But what it's worth noting is that hypersonic missiles refer to sort of a category of an emerging technology in the military space that, as of now, the military hasn't even officially incorporated into its into its arsenal. It's still a prototype. So it would be quite hard for the supervisor to have told her quite exactly how these weapons defend the U.S. when the military itself doesn't have an official mission for them. So maybe this will be a weapon that's in the arsenal of tomorrow, or maybe it will be like so many others, discarded in sort of the dustbin of discarded weapons of yesteryear. I was blown away, though. I was blown away that the supervisor told her that. In what would sound like an attempt sort of to comfort her or to diminish the death. But the irony of telling somebody that you work in the defense industry to defend the nation, but we can't defend you on the job against an argon gas leak just was extraordinary to me.
And that sort of kind of rhetoric has not even been relegated to people in the defense industry who have these dangerous kind of jobs. There's been a lot of, especially since the pandemic started, a lot of attempt to shower workers with praise so that they don't have to provide actually provide material things for the workers, like higher wages or safer working conditions. In this case would have been the operative thing to do for a hero. To make sure that the spaces that they go into are not filled with a gas that'll asphyxiate you in seconds.
Absolutely. And just to state the obvious, these men didn't sign up. They didn't join the military. They didn't sign up to, they weren't a Navy SEAL. They were doing, 12-hour shifts at a factory. This was their day job. They were not signing up to die on the job in, supposedly defending the nation doing so.
And so were they unionized at this plant?
So I was told the plant, so as you know, Utah is a right to work state. So therefore, even if it is unionized, people will have the option to to choose not to join. And I was told this plant had a small representation of the steel workers, but that the two men and a lot of other people in the plant were not union members. And Utah, if I have not mistaken. Mm-hmm.
So meaning that they were not in the bargaining unit represented by the steelworkers, or meaning that they were represented but were not members?
They were. That's a good question. I don't believe. At least they were not. They were not members. But
because
there
are plants that have different, the janitorial staff may be, unionized with the SEIU. And so, the SEIU wouldn't represent a machine worker, right? If that was the case of the facility. So, so it could be and I'd be interested in learning that. It could be that the steel workers represent, I don't know, the tool and die workers or something, and not whatever they did. So.
No, that's a good question. And I know at least they were not members But I don't know, what led that to happen.
And so, that at least they said if it was small representation, then presumably whether or not their bargaining unit was represented, it doesn't sound like the union represents everybody in that facility, and that kind of goes into your next the piece that you put out a couple of months back now about unions in the defense industry and how they have been really remarkably decimated over the past few decades. Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. I'm really happy to get to talk about this piece. You can find it on Inkstick Media. I think it's called Union Rates Decline at Top Defense Contractors. So I got a few tips with this piece. Really, let me first go back. The motivation to do this reporting was kind of hearing in general that defense contractors are highly unionized. And I thought, really, I don't know. I speak with workers in these places, and I get the impression that's not the case. And after sort of reporting out the story, finding the data, speaking with the individual workers, my conclusion is that impression was once true, but it's just several decades out of date and hasn't really been updated. So I got a tip that in an SEC filing that publicly traded companies have to file called a Form 10K, they often will report their union figures in a rough way. It will say something like, we have a workforce of 100,000 people and 19,000 of them are represented by collective bargaining unions. So I gathered all of that data for the top 5 defense contractors, and I had a really nice breakthrough, which was I wanted to know historical figures. But it's only those forms you can find online pretty easily through maybe 2000 or so, but I wanted to go back even further than that, and I got access to a very specialized archive of corporate documents that allowed me to dig back even further to see what that data was like. And so, for example, at Lockheed Martin, which is the largest defense contractor in the US and in the world, 69% of workers at least were unionized in 1971. Wow. And nowadays that number is just 19%. And that's still, quote, high for the defense industry, because at Northrop Grumman, the company that I just mentioned, just 4% of workers are unionized. That figure blew me away. Because these are manufacturers. These are supposed to be the kind of workplaces that lend themselves to organizing. And in a variety of ways that we document in the piece, they really have both stealthily and sometimes not so stealthily bust their unions over time.
Right. And what are some of the ways that they have that they've been able to get away from union membership?
Yeah. So one that workers and labor figures would tell me about, of course, was subcontracting. So really just getting people off their books, which was the workers at the Lockheed Martin plant in Marietta, a suburb of Atlanta, told me that was one way that the company had been just stealthily chipping away at their membership for year after year. And then it has it becomes sort of a vicious cycle downward, because then the union is just in defensive mode, trying to convince the remaining members that it's still worth it to participate. They showed me their union hall that they said used to have, 3,000 people or more, and that their union elections back in the 70s would be a 3-day affair. And nowadays they say on a good, an average month, they have maybe 25 people show up to their meetings. So subcontracting was a big one. Another force is sort of the white collarization of the defense industry. This is also a figure you can find in the company's Form 10Ks. They'll report their number of engineers, their number of scientists, and you can track over time. I have the figure in my piece, but I'd have to pull it back up. But that number was maybe in the teens or 20s or so back in the 70s, and now that number is sort of over 50%. And even, of course, there exists at least one large white collar union at a major defense contractor, at Boeing in Washington State. But in general, union activity at defense contractors is a blue collar affair. So sort of the white collarization in general of the workforce has also pushed those numbers down. And finally, what they are doing in a very major way, which is moving into right to work states, including and very particularly here in the South. And in Utah, which I also just mentioned.
And so, the decline of unionization, were you able to track in your piece, I can't remember, any discernible correlations? I know that, it's not like a rigorous kind of peer-reviewed study, and so there's not, it'd be difficult to say definitively that there's a cause, but were you able to track any correlation workplace incidents or, compensation, healthcare, retirement packages, anything like that with the decline of unionization in these companies?
Yeah. Well, at least with compensation, it's actually quite remarkable that there is data on compensation in the defense industry that comes from an industry group called the National Defense Industrial Association, and they show it's about that real salaries, inflation adjusted salaries, average salaries in the defense industry have gone down since the 80s, something like 20%, which is extremely remarkable because it's the industry is getting more white collar, but for some reason the salaries are going down.
And is that 20% adjusted for inflation, or is that actually
just adjusted for inflation?
Okay.
Which is really remarkable.
Yeah.
And which kind of gets back to how I wanted to introduce the story, which is I think our understandings of employment in the defense industry are kind of, a little bit stuck in the past and just need some updating, because indeed, I mean, I've heard this from workers, I've read this in the literature. In a time like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, this was a highly unionized, this was a really good job to have. And I think the contractors have kept up that sort of good job creation rhetoric without having much accountability or scrutiny for the way that it just isn't the job it used to be, back in the day. And I should add, I mean, there are still, some members who are making good salaries and who are making good livings inside the industry. I spoke with some workers at the Lockheed plant in Marietta, who described to me that, the very livable pensions they will have when they retire in a few years. But guess what? The company cut the pensions back in like 2011 or something. So they know the new hires just aren't going to have the life that they had. So I sort of think it's important to draw out the way that a job at a defense contractor, especially for new entrants, just really isn't what it used to be. The union in Marietta have told me that their turnover is enormous, and they're just constantly onboarding people, which then, of course, in the process also weakens the union to have, your young people and your new entrants, leaving for a job at Delta Airlines as soon as it comes up.
Right. And so the way that you ended your piece about the defense industry unions is, interestingly, especially with the UAW being in the conversation so much, a lot of the UAW conversation is about a just transition. And in that context, we're talking about transitioning from gas-powered automobiles to electric-powered automobiles. But you mentioned that there's, interest in the defense unions in a just transition from a, war production, producing hypersonic missiles that may or may not ever be used. And then honestly, if they're ever used, it'd probably be, detrimental to the human race, like just not good for people to use these things. And so, there's some interest in some of these defense unions in, saying like, hey, look, maybe our labor should be doing something that's like useful instead, and making a more green economy.
Absolutely. And sort of just to detail that, the largest union by far amongst defense contractors is the machinist union. They told me that of their membership of about 600,000, about 60,000 at their last sort of survey were in defense, and that can include many jobs or in some way like a hybrid job. So, for example, if you're working at Pratt & Whitney, you're making engines both for the military and for commercial use. Whereas, if you're, certain jobs, if you're at the F-35 plant, you're pretty much in an exclusively military job. But yeah, the machinists themselves have recognized that they need to and already are diversifying their membership as the face of, a union worker changes in America. So they told me they were going into everything from legal aid nonprofits to libraries to healthcare workers. And I put this in our newsletter I think it was just last week. They now have their what I believe is their first campaign at an electric vehicle plant in Illinois. So yeah, it's remarkable, and that sort of gets to what I've heard when I've spoken with defense workers and when I've spoken with union leadership, is that people they care about their job and they care about what they're doing at the end of the day and what the product will be used for, but most immediately they care about having a good job. And when Lockheed Martin cuts your pensions, and when you're doing backbreaking labor, and when you're working 12-hour shifts and you are, asphyxiated by argon gas, like at a certain point, there's more questions about what is a good job. And yeah, so I feel like when I've spoken with workers, many may say, yes, I would like to have hypersonic missiles for XYZ reason, and I like hearing that, and I want to hear why. But also, what I hear so much in the foreground and so saliently is really, I want to have a good job. I want to support my family. I don't want to retire in poverty. And I think that's, I think that hopefully both of our stories start to tell the story of what that looks like.
Yep, absolutely. Taylor, really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that you think, you'd want to leave us with before we let you go?
No, thank you very much for having me on. And I'm thrilled to come on to Huntsville, and basically send me any tips. I'm all ears always for labor stories. That's exactly how I heard about the deaths of the workers at Northrop Grumman. So I'm T Barnes, TBARNES at inkstickmedia.com. And we have a newsletter that I'm very grateful has gotten pretty popular, called Military Industrial America, on Substack. So also, if you just want something in newsletter like, hey, Taylor, please highlight my organizing campaign, please highlight what happened at my job site, send it to us and we'll put it in our newsletter.
Awesome. Great. We'll keep that in mind. Taylor, thanks for coming on again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Taylor Barnes, check her out. Subscribe to the newsletter. Read Inkstick Media. We have a caller on the line. Let's bring them into the... Let's bring them on the air. The caller is from a 989 area code. 989 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Jacob. This is Brandy Booth. How you doing?
Brandy Booth. I'm glad you called in. I saw you in the chat. Glad you were able to make it and watch us live, folks. Brandy Booth is, and I meant to bring your books and give a copy to everybody.
That's not really why I'm calling today. We can do that at some other time. I'm producing a little video that I'll send you guys, and we can mention it now. But I just wanted to say that the way that you guys are going about your information, I appreciate it. I learn a lot. I've been in the union here in Bay City and Saginaw for 30 years. I worked as a production employee. I've worked in skilled trades as a millwright welder, and I was in the union as a committee man, contract negotiator for Saginaw Steering Gear for almost 10 years, which ultimately got sold to the Chinese government. And so we've been through a lot up here. I'm currently at Bay City Powertrain up there, General Motors, just waiting to see. We haven't been called out to strike yet, but we walked for 40 days in 2019. We're ready to do it again. But I wanted to point out one thing about the General Motors situation, and just the way that the government loans worked back then. I was a big that's pretty much when I was in the union, when all that bankruptcy happened and stuff. And I watched us. They took those loans. And the American people really don't realize that there was like $12.5 billion from those loans that was like written off as legacy costs. And it was, other things. They were, they said, well, you didn't keep the stock long enough for us to, for it to mature. So the American taxpayer took $12.5 billion loss on those loans. But when you think about it, when have you ever taken, as an American taxpayer, when have you ever taken a loan out where you didn't have to pay the whole thing back, principal plus the interest? So, I mean, a lot of these people, when you look at it, they're saying, well, these corporations are doing well and everything. But if you look at the way that the standard of living, not only for union people, but for everybody in the area, the standard of living's gone down over the last decade. At the same time, with corporate profits have soared, not only in the auto industry, but in all across the board, corporate America, like Amazon, different things like that. These profits continue to soar. And although we're really proud to be a part of creating profits like that, it's kind of sad that, because they have made all those profits, not much of that money has made it back into the American economy. You know what I mean? But when you get auto worker wages that are better, and those support local economic jobs. Like when COVID came around, we were patronizing our local businesses because those people were fighting to stay alive.
Yep.
You know, and we were totally supporting them. And that's why when we went out in 2019, they supported us. We supported them during the pandemic, and now they're really coming. Despite what you see on some of the news, these people are really coming around the UAW, and they realize where that money is going, and they realize when the money comes back into our economy that's the, but so anyhow, I just wanted to share that little perspective as far as the, I mean, we kind of feel like even if they put money in the infrastructure, if they want to go to electric cars, come to us and show us as part of this how we can, the UAW can help them make our infrastructure better. You know what I mean? Let's put the money back into America that comes out of America. That's our whole point pretty much behind it. So
yeah.
Anyhow.
Absolutely. I actually had somebody just yesterday, talking to me and asking, does the UAW, are they anti-electric vehicles or whatever? That's what I'm hearing on the news. I hear that the UAW, they hate electric vehicles, and it's like, no, they don't. They hate that electric vehicles are being used to create a race to the bottom.
Yeah. I've got a different kind of opinion on that because I worked the last decade or more in an internal engine components plant. We make camshafts, we make, and that our feeling in our plant, like that's going to completely wipe us out. There will be no more powertrain units. And, so we need a transition. And so there is, and, when you look at it, they haven't proven the efficiency, on them. And one of our big sticking points, because Michigan and between Michigan and Canada, they fight over landfills and garbage quite a bit and stuff like that. Nobody knows how to get rid of the batteries. They don't have them up to a standard yet where we can reuse them over and over again. And there's a lot of waste. We're worried about that. So I mean, there's a lot of concerns. Like the infrastructure is a main one. We have rolling blackouts in this country. Sometimes they can't produce enough to keep people's air conditioning running. So, but we're an internal engine plant, so you got to expect us almost to take that kind of stance.
For
you
sure.
know, I mean, that's our product. I make camshafts and connecting rods and things of that nature, and I'm proud of it. We make good ones.
Yep. But most important thing is that whatever work y'all do or people end up doing is that y'all are taken care of, and it's good to see. It's good to see some movement from GM specifically. They were the ones that folded the battery plants into the national agreement.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, exactly. We're making progress, and I think President Payne's doing a good job. There were a lot of people that were kind of nervous to see a guy with, who some considered a little bit radical, but I think he's doing a good job. So,
yeah,
and I was involved when I got up to a certain point. I was sergeant at arms on the International Skilled Trade Subcouncil, and I looked around and I decided that job wasn't for me, just for a lot of reasons. So there was a lot of stress. I mean, at that level, there was a lot of stress. So now you see what I'm doing. I'm just writing books of funny stories of people. Do you mind if I mention that? Because I'm going to give it away for free on Kindle.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention that, so I'll let you take it away.
So when I transferred from that plant that got sold to the Chinese. I transferred back to a General Motors plant. They call it a flowback. And my first day in there, we're walking around, and this old man, we were walking in our little group of people, men and women. I think there's about 8 or 9 of us. And we're walking around, and this old man pops out from behind this machine that says, "Excuse me, sir, did you get one of these yet today?" And he flipped me off. And before I could say anything to the guy, he turned to the lady next to me and he goes, "How about you, ma'am? Did you get one of these yet today?" And he flipped her off too, And some people might be offended by that, but I knew that was that guy's way of saying, "Hey, I got some stories to tell. Come on back," So over like the next 3 years, I came back and I would tell him stories from the old steering gear plant. He would tell me stories that happened right where we were at in Bay City there. And then we lost him to cancer. So I started thinking about all those people that I've worked with through the years that, repetitive jobs, they play little tricks on you and stuff like that. So it's just kind of funny that, the things that they can do. And it was a really fun book to write. There's a chapter in there called Messing with the Boss. There's one called Overboard Paybacks, where, you know, workers will get going back and forth at each other, and then somebody comes way over the top, and those moments, you tend to remember them, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but yeah, it's just a little fun book of 60 stories. There's no bashing anybody at any kind, no union bashing, no company bashing, no, even the boss that's got the job of giving me something to do every day, I don't bash them either. It's just people do funny things. And if you're paying attention and you write some of that stuff down, then, so the book's called Did You Get One of These Yet Today? And Amazon allows me to give it away for 5 days over a 90-day period. So for the next 5 Fridays, because that's when they've been doing the typical UAW updates, for the next 5 Fridays, I'm going to give it away for free on Amazon Kindle. So, or you can go to Amazon and order it under the name, Did You Get One of These Yet Today? But I hope you guys like them.
All right. I'm looking forward to reading it. Appreciate it. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for the books.
Yep. Take her easy, Jacob. Bye.
All right.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Looking forward to checking out the book. My father-in-law is a UAW retiree, and he always has great stories about the pranks that they used to pull on each other at the plant. You know, like you said, repetitive jobs, people get bored. You know, and, you know, guys especially, like, we never fully grow up. And so,
right?
You know, we're kind of got that high school prankster mentality a lot of times, even regardless of how old we are. So, yeah, I can't wait to look into it and share it with my father-in-law as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I gave you guys a couple extra copies just because I thought that maybe you would know that. And to be honest, you spend a lot more time with your coworkers actually than you spend with your family a lot of times. You know, working 12-hour days, that's your family, you know, and that's what the book's all about. It's just union, family, having fun.
Yep.
Heck
So,
yeah.
All right.
Appreciate you, man.
it.
Have a
Yeah,
good
fella.
weekend.
You too.
That's going to be it for us today, I think. I think we're going to wrap up. So appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Like the stream on your way out. If you haven't, subscribe to the channel. TVLR.fm/donate to make a one-time or monthly recurring contribution. That's how we stay on the air. We buy the airtime on the radio. So I don't know how many people know that or remember that, but that costs money. And then we don't make money, but we pay people on the back end to do some of these nice graphics that you're seeing. This nice camera that I'm looking into, this nice microphone we rent from the studio space here. So, you know, it takes a good amount of money to make this run. And if we are ever able to consistently bring in more than our operating costs, then we will get on more radio stations. So,
That's right. That's right. And if you are in an area outside of our radio market, if you are in Montgomery, Birmingham, Mobile, Anniston, and you're like, hey, I would love to have the Value Labor Report on local commercial radio, hit us up and talk to us. If we could find the sponsors, we are happy to expand and always looking into that. And I did have a couple plugs before we wrap up this afternoon. And again, I appreciate everyone tuning in. I want to remind folks about Shop Talk. That will be Thursday, and this week only, it will be at 10:30 a.m. Really looking forward to that one. How to have 10-minute meetings. I've never spoken to Lisa from Labor Notes before. She's newer on their staff, so really looking forward to that. I heard her on the Counterspin podcast a couple weeks ago. She did a great job. And speaking of Labor Notes, they do have some really great trainings coming up. They have in November a stewards workshop called Assertive Grievance Handling. That's on November 15th. Should be really good. Of course, they have What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart. That'll be on November 7th. Here's one that is very relevant to the conversation we were just having, which is Fight the Boss, Fix the Climate on October 23rd. So check that out. I always love labor and environmental coalition building. Any way we can work together to fix these crises, I think, is just so important. So I love that they're having that workshop. And of course, they have their Secrets of a Successful Organizer October series. They had the first one already on the 11th, but you can still pop in for the 18th and the 25th. If you've never attended a Secrets of a Successful Organizer series by Labor Notes, I highly, highly recommend it if you're at all interested in getting more involved. And that's more involved in your union, but honestly more involved in your community. It's just a lot of good principles to learn. And on Monday, October 16th, so just a couple days from now, will be Blair L.M. Kelly's little class with the Zen Education Project on her latest book, Black Folk, The Roots of the Black Working Class. We interviewed historian Blair L.M. Kelly about a month or so ago. Really enjoyed that conversation with her. It's a really good book, and I'm a big fan of Zen Education Project, so you can sign up for that online session. Again, that's Monday, October 16th. And as I mentioned earlier, Alabama Rise 2024 priorities are in. So definitely check out their 2024 roadmap for change in Alabama. I've been out the last couple of weeks. One of those weekends was for their Rise annual meeting where the members got to vote on the agenda. So really excited about that. And Jacob was on Left Reckoning. I was on America's Workforce. I've been on America's Workforce every month now for quite a while. In September, I was like a featured guest, and then this past week, I was just on for a few minutes to talk about Stage Management Day. But do check out my episode of the Huntsville Progressive, especially those of you in Alabama. It's a local podcast here in Huntsville. Joy Johnson does that podcast. She's a longtime activist here in the Huntsville area. So really appreciate her time and having me on the show. And final thing I'll plug is to sign up for our newsletter. We're putting out Boss Watch and Last Week in Southern Labor as newsletters. You can sign up at tvlr.fm. Definitely do that. And just spread the word, y'all. Spread the word. You know what? I just realized that National Bosses Day is Monday. And so I think in honor of National Bosses Day, if y'all can give us some text messages and some voicemails over the next week, that would be great. Share your bad boss stories. Tell us about your favorite bosses, your worst bosses. But we've got to do something to honor National Bosses Day. I feel like it's kind of essential.
Yep. All right, we'll close the show by giving you an update to the Decatur police killing of a citizen last week. This just came out 2 hours ago on AL.com. In response to a public records request Thursday, the Decatur City Clerk confirmed that no court orders were issued, and thus no order in which a judge authorized the police to assist in repossession. The legislature approved official commentary that informs the statute governing vehicle repossessions in the state explicitly states that the statute does not authorize law enforcement to assist in repossessions without judicial process, of which there was none, apparently.
So even more evidence of wrongdoing here. And again, just sending my love and solidarity to all the folks affected out there. It's past time for some justice.
Yep. All right. See you next week, folks. Thanks for staying with us.